Hi, everybody. Is everybody here? I think all the commissioners are here.
Looks like, Mr. Chair, we might still be waiting on.
Oh, we're waiting on Commissioner Bolton.
Commissioner Bolton's here.
Oh, there he is, right there. Next.
Thoroughly offended that you didn't recognize his presence. But I do see where we might be waiting. Oh, there's Commissioner Locke. Wonderful. Okay, everyone here, it looks like. So you can call for the roll.
Okay. Reed's here, so I will call the regular meeting of the Carmel Planning Commission of May 11th to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Bolton?
Here.
Commissioner Delves?
Here.
Commissioner Lehman?
Here.
Commissioner Locke?
Here.
Chair LePage?
Here. Okay, I want to welcome everybody to our meeting today. The first item on our agenda today is the public appearances. Anyone who would like to address the Planning Commission on matters of municipal concern can do so at this time. These matters will not have discussion at this meeting, but they may be agendized at a later meeting. Is there anyone here that would like to address the Planning Commission? This for matters that are not on our agenda. I see a hand up there. I can't quite read your name. Would you like to unmute yourself and speak to us?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Now we can, yes, go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Hatay Brangthong. I'm a longtime resident, and I wish to follow up on the Planning Commission resolution from March 9th, denying the after-the-fact expansion of the non-conforming structure at Northeast Corner, Ocean and San Antonio, Le Chiffre Holding, LLC. On May 2nd, we have received and reviewed the revised plan that was dated April 14th to lower the plate height, which was found to have exceeded condition of approval by about 11 inches per staff report back in March. Staff report noted benchmark at the time 200.3. Unfortunately, the revised plan to bring the plate height in compliance is still not correct. The benchmark number used is the newly built floor level at 200.59, instead of using the original floor level at 200.22 in the applicant's plan resubmitted to you at that same meeting. Carmel's height measurement guideline clearly states that the lower level number is to be used. We have immediately reached out to city staff, but have yet to receive a reply. Using this newly built higher floor level as benchmark would result in an expanded plate height, a violation of the condition of approval and your resolution from March. Therefore, the plate height needs to be lowered to 19.22 level, which is 19 feet above the ground level mentioned. Furthermore, in the March 9th meeting, Commissioner Bolton has pointed out and staff has acknowledged that the plate height in question on the west side should be aligned with that of the existing plate height on the east side structure. I respectfully request enforcement of your March resolution, which cite Carmel Municipal Code prohibiting expansion to the non-conforming structure. It has been over 7 months since my initial communication, and now 2 months since the Commission's resolution. I fear that more time and money will be wasted if this erroneous plan is allowed to proceed. Please uphold the integrity of Carmel's municipal code so that it is equally applied to all. I thank you for your time again and for your consideration.
Thank you. Brandon, do you want to make any comments about that?
If you'd like me to, I can comment on it briefly. We are in receipt of revised plans from the applicant from that day. We are still reviewing them. We did respond to Mrs. Rangthong's attorney, letting her know. So they have actually received a response that we are reviewing them and we'll respond to them when we have an analysis of that. So that's where we're at in the process right now, is we've got resubmitted plans and we haven't made a determination yet within my department. So that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else at this time that would like to address the Planning Commission on matters which are not on our agenda tonight. Dale,
Michael,
yeah,
I've
Dale,
got a
you want
comment.
to?
This
you wanna-
is Dale Burns speaking
Yes,
for
go ahead,
myself.
Dale.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Good afternoon. So I don't know really what I'm trying to get at in the point here, but we've got, I'm on San Antonio, 2 Southeast 13th. And again, I'm not angry about anything. It just sort of hit me that there's a project at Edgemere 2 doors down, which is a significant project because it's a large property and she's doing a really beautiful job. We're excited about it. But then they also started the project, as you know, at Colonial Inn, which we're also excited about. It's going to be a beautiful project, but it's also a very large project. And they're doing a good job. All the contractors are great, but they're big projects and there's lots of trucks. And then in the middle of all this, recently another project started across the street, which at first I thought was just a minor remodel, but it turns out it's not a minor remodel. They've gutted the house, it appears, twice. They're taking the entire roof off the house. So it's a complete major remodel of a very large house, $11 million sale a few months ago. So I don't know what regulations exist or what guidelines are used to sort of look at, and it's also by the beach, so we have lots of street parking, which we don't mind. None of this we mind. It's just, it's sort of brought up like, is it looked at when you allow projects to proceed that there are that many big projects going on that close to the beach where you already have beach parking? And it, you know, the other day there were probably 20 trucks and one of them hit the front of our car a little bit. And again, I'm not that angry. It just happens. But I don't know if you guys have any kind of structured way of timing projects so that you don't have this happen. So, and I don't really know what I'm asking you to do. It's just, I wanted to point this out that it happened.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Again, Brandon, do you want to make any comments regarding this?
Sure. No, I guess to the simple question of do we have any restrictions as to how many projects can be going on in a certain area at a certain time, the answer is no. I think that would unfairly prejudice construction projects. But I will say that we are in the midst of working on updating our design guidelines and the zoning code. And one of the things I have on my list, I've had on my list since I got here that we need to look at doing a better job of, or just doing a job of because we don't do it, is requiring construction management plans on projects of a certain size, because those construction management plans would lay out where people will park, how they will park, where materials are stored, how many vehicles they can have on site. So we can enforce that if it's included with these discretionary projects as a condition of approval. So we don't have that right now. It's something we've done in other jurisdictions I've worked in, and it's really helpful to be able to require a contractor to put together a construction management plan, because it forces them to think about how those things are going to be handled before they even put a shovel in the ground. So it's something that I'm working on with my team and will be hopefully included and adopted as part of the zoning code updates. It's something I'm going to recommend we put in there. But as far as currently, no. Of course, if people are parked illegally, you know, the requirement is that you have to be able to get an emergency vehicle through. So if people are parked illegally and making an unsafe situation, I would ask someone to call our department, Community Planning and Building, right away, and we will come down, or we will get the police department to help us clear the street, because we don't want to create an unsafe situation. But like I said, as to the original question of do we have any way to limit timing, we don't have that. I don't know if I would be even a fan of creating something like that in the future, because I think it would unfairly prejudice people's timing on their projects. But I think we can do a better job of managing the construction sites through those construction management plans.
Great, thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brandon. Those good comments. Okay, is there anyone else from the public that would like to address the Planning Commission on matters which are not on our agenda tonight? I don't see any hands. I don't hear anybody, so we will move on with the agenda. The next item. The next item is a consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine in nature and do not require discussion or independent action. Members of the Commission of the Public may request that an item be considered individually for purposes of clarification. Are there any tonight? Let's say tonight we have 3 items on the consent agenda. We have the adoption of the Planning Commission April 13th meeting minutes. We have the staff monthly report on the building permit activity, and we have a design study. This is DS 20-191 and a variance, which is 20-360. And this is a consideration for requests of a 1-year time extension of the design study and the variance. So those are the 3 items on the consent agenda tonight. Does anyone from any of the commissioners want any of these items pulled or have any questions about any of them?
No.
Okay, do any members of the public want any of these items pulled for discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none, then I will make a motion that we accept items 1, 2, and 3 on the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Bolton? Commissioner Delves?
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman?
Yes.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
Chair LePage?
Yes, I guess Commissioner Bolton lost his
Yeah,
connection.
Mr. Chair, I was going to chime in. He just messaged me on the side. He needed to go for a family emergency, so he will not be here.
Okay, all
He will
right,
not be here for the rest of the meeting.
all right.
Mm.
Sorry to hear that. Okay. The next item on the agenda tonight are orders of business. And the first item is to meet the team from Winter and Company and provide early guidance on the Design Traditions 1.5 project. So are you going to introduce those people?
Yeah, thank you,
Brandon?
Mr. Chair. We, Nori, who just turned his video on, Nori Winter, who's the principal of Winter and Company and actually worked with the city 20 plus years ago on the existing design guidelines. We're lucky to have him back with us. He and I are going to tag team this presentation. It's similar to what we did for the city council last week. So I'm going to share my screen here and put up a presentation and we will run through that for you. All right, can you see that in full screen or is there a little black side window? We're good? Okay, great. So as I mentioned, we're here to just introduce you to the Design Traditions 1.5 project, introduce you to Nori Winters. And at the end of this, spoiler alert, we're going to be asking the Planning Commission to give us some feedback on 2 really simple, high-level questions. And then, Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, I would ask that we allow the public to answer those questions too, if anybody would like to be here tonight to answer those as well. So just a quick overview, the project scope, we're going to be updating the residential design guidelines and the commercial design guidelines. This is important because if you've noticed, the commercial design guidelines are pretty thin. Nori will be the first one to tell you that his company had nothing to do with those 20 years ago. They wrote the commercial design guidelines and then the commercial design, they wrote the residential design guidelines and then the commercial design guidelines were written by the city shortly after that and are more of a policy guidance than actual design guidelines. So the scope is to bring the commercial design guidelines up to the quality of the residential design guidelines and then refresh both of those documents. And you'll notice that we're calling this Design Traditions 1.5. That's not a mistake. 1.5 is meant to denote that this is really a polishing and a refreshing and a building off of what already exists as a very, very good document. We didn't call it 2.0 on purpose because we're not blowing anything up or throwing anything away. As part of the project, we will also be crafting related zoning code amendments. These are zoning codes that implement the design guidelines. Think of the zoning code as telling you, the height or the setbacks, the more specific regulatory law things. The design guidelines are more about the aesthetics and design. And then, of course, the project is of utmost importance as part of the project is engaging the community throughout the whole thing. We're going to have a lot of community meetings. This and the city council meeting last week are really the kickoff for that, but the first true hands-on meeting will be in June. We're going to have a workshop, and Nori will talk about that a little bit later. So who are the stakeholders in this project? First and foremost, it's the community. That's the only way this project is going to be successful over the next 12 months. That includes residents, business owners, community groups, anyone who is part of our community. That also includes City Council, this Planning Commission, and the Historic Resources Board, all of which have a stake in the outcome of this project. So we are encouraging everyone to get involved often and as frequently as they can. And we will keep everyone aware of those opportunities as they come up. Just briefly, the project team, you can see on the left-hand side there, city planning staff. So this is an opportunity. I will be acting as the city's project manager for this project. However, I really think it's important for my entire team, one of whom you will meet today for the first time, our newest planner, So all four of my team on the planning side to be involved in this. Everyone's at different places in their careers, has different points of view and thoughts. And it's really a wonderful project to be able to have your fingerprints on that's going to last hopefully the next 10 or 20 years. So that's the city team. Winter and Company, that's Nori and his team. I'll let him talk about them. And then we have a steering committee that was appointed by the city council, I believe most of which are with us tonight on the planning commission meeting. They have committed as a volunteer to be with us through this whole year process, not as professionals who are designing or writing anything. They're really community members first, who are helping to kind of keep their finger on the pulse of the project, as well as their finger on the pulse of the residents, so that we don't go astray, and that they sort of act as somewhat of a watchdog group to make sure that we're keeping, all the input that we're getting along the way from the residents and the community in mind as we go through this. So that's our steering committee. We meet monthly with them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nori Winters, as I introduced him at the city council, the man, the myth, the legend, to talk about his company and how he's going to be working with us over the next year. So Nori, take it away.
Thanks, Brandon, and greetings. It is a pleasure to be back working in Carmel, and we've, in the intervening 20 years, had the opportunity to work across the country, which this map illustrates a variety of projects that we've worked in. And I just wanted to mention that because in those 20 years, a lot has been refined in terms of the way design is managed, in terms of guidelines and zoning standards. And we're bringing that experience to the project, not to copy what we've done elsewhere, but to learn from it and adapt it to what is, of course, an extremely unique context of Carmel. Next slide, please. We're starting from a good policy base that includes the general plan as well as a variety of other policy documents. We've been reviewing the background information related to the existing guidelines and zoning code along the way. Of course, some new factors that are influencing what goes into the guidelines today are recent state laws, such as SB 9 and the regulations about accessory dwelling units and just the housing goals numbers that each community has now. And there are a variety of informal materials that staff have been collecting over the years, a list of a variety of revisions, particularly to the zoning code, that should happen as a part of this project. Next slide, please. We're also drawing upon a lot of resource materials from the original project. We have all of the photographic files. The current documents are published in black and white, but we have the original color files. So where appropriate, where we want to continue to use some of the existing photographs, we can freshen them in color. There also are a variety of background reports that are not a part of the official design guidelines documents. And there's a lot of good information in those that we'll also be bringing forward. Next slide, please. The project is organized into a series of steps that are designed to bring us through a fairly logical step-by-step decision-making sequence. And the first objectives are to certainly get a good handle on existing conditions and then a good handle on the community sentiments. We are planning for a community workshop coming up later in June. And out of that and the background information that we've collected and the work sessions we're having with staff and as well as the steering committee, we'll be developing a strategy that is an outline of the revisions that we propose be made. We'll be bringing that back to the community to confirm direction. We'll have another community workshop related to that and also be presenting it again to you. Based on that direction, then we will move forward developing the formal draft materials for the design guidelines and for the zoning amendments. Next slide, please. That also will then be presented back to the community. We will make revisions based on comments and then develop the drafts for adoption with a target that adoption hearings would be occurring early spring of next year. Next. I mentioned the steering committee, and we've been meeting with them on a regular basis. We had a great work session a couple of weeks ago, And now we are preparing for the community workshops. We're saying they're hybrid. That is that they will be hands-on in person, but people can also join in online and participate in the same workshop activities that we envision. And as I mentioned, we'll be coming back to you and City Council along the way as well to check in with you. Next slide, please. So that leads us to the key questions that we want to pose tonight, and I will turn it back over to Brandon to field these, and I'll be taking notes and he will be too.
Yep, thanks, Nori. So I think Nori summed it up really well. Where we're at in the process right now is we're laying that groundwork, we're developing exercises for the community workshop, and these questions here are meant to make sure that we are focusing on the right things early on in the process. So what we'd like to ask of you, Commission, this evening is, what are the key issues? And this is really a two-part question. What are the key issues the project should address? What are any recent trends that the project should address? And in your minds, when we all sit around in a year and look back at the successful project, what is it that made it a success? So with that, I'll complete our presentation and look to the Commission for answering these two questions. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess we'll open it up to the commissioners first to answer those two questions. Commissioner Dells, would you like to
Sure.
chime in on those two questions?
Yeah, I will try. Where to start? I've been on the Planning Commission / Design Review Board for 15 months now, and I'm still figuring it out. So I'm going to address a little bit some of the challenges I have found as still a reasonably new commissioner trying to come into this job. The first thing I would point out is in our current residential design guidelines prepared by Winter and Company, they envision a track 1, track 2, track 3 process. Track 1, I get, that's basically a staff review. But then there's track 2, which envisions a design review board or planning commission approval, and track 3, which is a planning commission approval. I'm guessing at the time they were done, there was a planning commission and there was a design review board. We are now both. And being both is not always clear what hat I'm wearing. And I think one of the things that we just have to decide is, are we going to continue to pretend like there's two bodies and we happen to just be checking both boxes? Yes, we're the design, yes, we're planning, yes, we're design review board. Or are we writing them with an assumption that it's just one body? And because I do think that it's helpful if these guidelines are written in a way that is friendly for those of us that have to sit in the regulatory chair. I mean, I think they're often written for the builder. And that's great. We need that. But if there was some sort of almost, here's how to do your job, here's how to apply these when you're sitting in this chair, I would find that helpful. Example is, we've also got design guidelines, and then we've got land use code. And they are sometimes overlapping, sometimes not, sometimes consistent, sometimes not. I tend to go to the design guidelines because often I really feel like I'm primarily filling a design review board seat here. And perhaps it would be helpful to even just have some sort of cross-reference between design guidelines and land use code so that I know that to check both boxes, that I know which to apply. And it gets back to that guideline is like, okay, when I'm interpreting land use code, am I a planning commissioner? When I'm interpreting design guidelines, am I a design review board member? And it's never been clear on that topic. So those have been perhaps just some of my frustrations. in trying to figure out how to do the job. On the commercial design guidelines, I'll just say yes, please. For example, planning in the design, in the residential guidelines, there's the planning a project piece, which is, it says, all right, consider the context of the project, consider the citywide context, consider the neighborhood context, consider the block context, consider the resources on the site, and then consider your program requirements. And we have one particular large commercial project that seems to not understand that 3-step or whatever, how many steps that is. And I don't need to pick on them. It's just, it's a current example that they're starting with the program requirements and then backing into it. And I think we're seeing that increasingly in residential as well. People are trying to draw as big a box as they can and then make an argument about how it fits. And I really do think we need to make sure that our architect community, and by and large, they do get it, that you got to start with the context. And so that's at least is the words are clear in the residential guidelines. They need to be more clear in commercial. As to trends, I think the elephant in the room is always going to be, the feelings that we can't have change versus the feelings that we always have to have change. That there is certainly a group in our city that really doesn't want to see more modern, more different, more new. They want a more repetition of what has historically been here. And that's, I understand that completely. I don't happen to agree with it. I really think we have to continue to open the door for what's next. But it just has to work. It still has to follow that, consider the context piece of things. So I guess in that regard, as you sort of understand the current state from 20 years ago, Nori, would really be to walk around and give yourself an inventory of some of the newer and different things that are out there. And I see Carol Hall here. I suspect she would have a list for you of things that you might just want to go look at. And I think that would help you inform yourself as to what has happened. And I don't even know what I'm asking for, but I think you will see that there's been a continued advancement of architecture here. And for someone like you who's seen it everywhere, I think ultimately what would be really helpful to me are pictures of this, not that, this, not that. And to have some of those applied to more modern contemporary architecture. My fellow, actually Michael in particular, has pointed, as we've talked sometimes, he's pointed, not with projects that are under consideration, but examples of where modern or contemporary have been done extremely well, and others where maybe not. So I think that would be helpful. And then one little thing is fencing and gates. I don't see clarity in our guidelines other than to try and preserve some openness and transparency into property. But we also have a city that's full of gates and fences, and just some direction on where we should go. What success looks like, Nora, you know as well as I do, finishing this in a year. That alone.
Agreed.
Success. I think there's enough competence in your team and in the steering committee here that I think you'll produce something of quality. It's just how long will it take you? That's it, Commissioner.
Commissioner Delves. I'm afraid maybe you had like a bugging device in the room when we've been meeting with Nori over the last couple of months, because everything you're saying, like, yep. We're all in agreement with that. So that was great. The first time Nori and his team came, I rented a passenger van so that his team and my team could all drive around the village for a few hours. And we did just exactly what you're talking about. So I think we're tracking. So thank you for those really thoughtful comments.
Certainly. Good luck. Have fun.
Okay. Commissioner Lima, would you like to make your comments this time?
Sure. I'm going to thank Commissioner Delves because that was a nice overview. And I was looking at it a little bit differently. I'm going to go backwards a little bit to trends. And I think we've got, I know we have climate change on this agenda, but I think above all, we've got to look at fire safety. And we're a community that's rampant for, we're just out there waiting for this fire to come. We're, so many of us live in what are now classified as high fire zones, and we have a real hard time getting home insurance. I know for ourselves, we've gone through 3 different insurance companies in the last 3 years because we keep getting not canceled, but refusal to renew the policy. So then we have to go out and look for another one. But I know we're not the only household that has faced this. And so I think fire safety is our biggest consideration as it is necessary in construction. So when we're putting up new buildings, I think this is an important aspect to look at and to incorporate it into the guidelines. As far as issues, I think Commissioner Delves touched on this a bit. I'm all for diversity in architecture. We're a community that does not want to look like Solvang, and Solvang has its own charms, I'm sure, but we don't want to look like everything is the same. The beauty of Carmel was and is its diversity, so that we had Mediterranean homes, we had English half timbered homes, we had French country, we had French timbered, and we have contemporary, and we have some great contemporary going on. And I feel so strongly we've got a lot of real talent in our architectural community, and we want to preserve that talent, and we want to keep it. We don't want to stifle their talents. These are talented men and women, and we want to keep going this way. That leads me to a small goodie called volumetrics. And I think the volumetrics, which came out of a terrific architect, but John Thodos, but I think it's something that needs to be rethought. And I think we are stifling creativity in style with volumetrics. And we all knew why this came together, because we were getting huge mansion-like houses, and none of us wanted that. But sometimes, we tip too far to the wrong side, and it's always been a problem calculation. It's easier now with CAD systems, but we don't want to ignore the Comstocks that have these amazing pictures on their roofs that we can't duplicate anymore because of volumetrics. I'd like for us to think about incorporating exterior colors into the guidelines. We do a lot of talk about it, but we have no heft to really discipline it or to require it, to put it in as a condition of approval, because it just appears to be vague in the current guidelines. There's one more thing that I've brought up before, no surprise to Brandon, I'm sure, or the commission. I find that projects get finalized, and they've had some big changes that, and they're not what was anything that was approved by the Planning Commission. I mean, those particular changes. I have one in mind particularly, which I'm not going to single out, but the house was supposed to be wood and it became stucco. The whole house became stucco. And the windows were to be divided light, and they're not divided lights, they're clear glass panels. So I get concerned about that. And I think years ago, what we used to do is that either the commission or as many people from the commission as would like to when a project is finalized, and we don't have that many that ever get final during the course of a month. The planner goes out, who's responsible for that, to sign it off for building, but we don't have anyone from the commission represented. And I think that would be a small thing for any of us to volunteer to take a month, you know, that month you do it, or that week you do it, or whatever, you know, you alternate and draw straws, whatever. But I certainly think that we have enough. We've got a small town, so any of us could walk to anything that was ready to be finalized, and the planner was ready to meet us there. That's about all I have for right now. You're getting an awful lot, Nori. I appreciate your expertise. And I really look forward to, I think you've put together a great committee, a great steering committee, and you've got people that really love this community. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Lehman. Another round of great comments, a lot of what we were tracking as well. So this is giving me a lot of confidence in where we've gone already. So thank you for that.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lehman. Commissioner Locke, would you like to make your comments now?
Sure, I'm happy to follow both of the other commissioners because you guys took a bunch of stuff off my list. So I'm completely supportive of everything that was just said. And in particular, one of my big concerns are the changes that are made between the time the Planning Commission approves a project and when it's finalized. And I totally agree that I would be happy to volunteer to go on a final to make sure that things were as approved. I've seen so many different changes in colors and whatnot, and that does bother me. So to try to point out some other things that haven't been mentioned already, I think that we've discussed our concept of dark sky, and that also should be included in this, especially related to skylights and that kind of thing. And I'm trying to think forward also, like not in the real close future, but also going forward in time. And Commissioner Lehman, I think you had mentioned, more direct guidelines as to color palettes that would be acceptable, materials that are acceptable. And as time goes on, we're going to find more, and I don't want to say synthetic, but different materials that may be appropriate, particularly in a high fire risk area. And I think that needs to be addressed. I know we've had multiple requests for the metal roofs and that kind of thing. And I think we have to be just accepting of these changes that are coming in the future. Let's see. And the whole discussion about acceptable designs and embracing what our future holds for us, because, when a lot of the design that I mean, there are so many different designs in our community, and those historic, I'm going to call them historic designs of the early 20th century, at the time, they may have been something that was at that time considered modern or contemporary in its own time. And in 1950s, same thing. And in the 1980s, same thing. Those 1950 houses are now considered classic historical houses. And 2020, we look back and we say the houses that were built in, some of the houses built in the 20s and 2000 are houses that now are kind of coming into this groove of kind of being historic looking in some cases. Anyway, I think we need to be aware of that. And I do support my other two commissioners on this. I think diversity is important. I do understand that there is this desire to keep kind of the context of our village. And I absolutely support that as well. And that all should be spelled out so that, as Commissioner Dell said, somebody who is sitting in our seats has more information and more direction on what is acceptable, what should not be, and this concept of mixing design review and planning and whatnot. I totally can understand how that comes into play. As far as other things, future housing, we're going to be getting into more, I'm sure, solar panels, generators. And one of the things I'd like to also just mention is that that might be something also to address is like when you're looking at mechanical for a house, air conditioning units, which we don't really have around here, but we're probably going to see more and more air conditioning units. I know in the climate study that we're going to be discussing next, there is discussion about changing out our heating and cooling systems with more environmentally friendly systems, but that should also kind of come into this. Fireplaces is another thing that I had on my list. Basements, and I think that kind of goes to the volumetrics study concept and how that might be brought in. Accessory dwelling units, subdivisions, and housing requirements are all things that we need to be considering. Hopefully accessory dwelling units are being used to provide housing for people, but a lot of times those ADUs are used just for your guests or your company, or to, in the cases of properties that have permits to rent or are renting monthly or whatever, that just provides another rental space in some cases. So I think we need to be kind of aware of that, and also this potential for subdivision. And I know we talked about it before, but the state's making it so much easier for properties to be subdivided, and we need to consider that. As far as the commercial district guidelines, we don't have space to meet our housing requirements. And so, the state comes down and says you need to do X amount of housing. Where are we ever going to meet those housing guidelines and housing requirements? And one place that I know this is not a popular thing to say, but going up is certainly one way that we might be able to meet some of those housing requirements. And people can't live in Carmel because it's so expensive right now. So that ability to provide affordable housing for the people who work in town, to me, is really important, as well as the senior housing thing. And I really would, any way we can get both of those types of housing in would be just really important. Let's see, finally, Bob, thank you for saying the gates and fences, because I know that was on my list. And I think that probably covers everything that I had on my list. And thank you, other commissioners, for your comments.
Thanks, Commissioner Locke. I would just want to comment, because I've heard it now 3 times. The concept of these guidelines becoming more usable, almost like a manual, and something that, I'm going to air quote normal people can use, not just planners and architects and builders. It's something that we talked about at the steering committee, or the steering committee brought that up as a point. The ultimate vision in my head for this project is that the design guidelines become so good and so usable, because there was a point in time recently where there was a conversation about reinstating the design review board. My vision for this would be that the design guidelines become so good that we don't need that, because they'll help the planning commission be so good at design and being consistent and understanding what those regulations are, that we won't have to have another layer of process. I mean, even though I'm a bureaucrat, I don't really want to I don't want to create another layer of process. So that would be one of my ultimate visions for this, is they do become usable, user-friendly, accessible to the average person. So yeah, thanks for that comment as well.
Sure.
Yes, Commissioner
I
Locke.
have one last thing that I forgot about, and that is the community input. And I know that was part of this discussion. Beyond, obviously, we have this great group of people with a lot of experience that are providing input as part of this. I know we've got public meetings coming up that we can get this, but I would actually reach out to the chamber, the residents, and quite frankly, part-time residents. And so we get an influx of people in the summertime that come from other states. If there was a way to actually engage them, even though they may not feel that they are permanent residents or, you know, voters in our area or whatever, if there was some way to also get some input from them, I think that would be helpful.
Thank you for that. We actually, Nori and I have talked about coming out of our community workshop in June. We're going to do 3 of those, creating some actual online surveys too, questions that are easily done as online survey. And those will be easier to send out and cast a broader net. So yeah, great feedback. Thank you for that.
Okay. The only thing I think there's been a lot of great comments, and I'm sure Nori really appreciates this input from the commissioners. And the only thing I was going to bring up, back when Mark Weiner was the planning director, the planning commission did create a subcommittee to go over the residential guidelines, and myself and Commissioner Bolton were on that. There was work that was done. We worked on about a year, and I hope you have that information at your disposal. Great, because there was a lot of work done, and a lot of it covered. Well, we covered volumetrics, because the volumetrics as it exists penalizes existing houses, and one of the things we want to do in our community is to maintain our existing homes, because that is the character of our community, these existing homes. And so the volumetrics, the way it is set up now, penalizes that. Many times it encourages applicants to actually tear down these structures rather than remodel them. And there was some other work done in there too regarding making things clearer and easier to deal with. So I hope you have that. And then
Yes.
the other thing I think, which is really going to drive the residential design guidelines, is climate change, and we're already seeing that. I mean, Commissioner Lehman talked about the high fire and how that's affecting insurance, but we are a community which traditionally was built out of a lot of wood structures, and our guidelines encourage wood roofs, and that is becoming obsolete because of the dangers of fire that's being caused by climate change. So that's going to be something that we need to incorporate into our guidelines going forward, residential and commercial guidelines going forward. So we maintain the character of our community, but we also meet these challenges that we're going to have with climate change. And the only other thing I was going to say is answer your question as far as what's going to make this successful. And I think it's already been said, it's going to, that we do it on a timeline of a year, and also that we have community engagement. I think you have a good outline to do that. Got the workshops, got a steering committee, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity for input. And I know there's a lot of people here that I see that I've heard from about this, and I know they'll all be involved, and we really appreciate that. So I think you've got a good framework for success here, and I know you're going to get a lot of input, because that's the way this community is. So I think that's what we need. So unless Brandon, you have any more comments or?
Oh, that's you all provided wonderful feedback. That's exactly what I was looking for. I'm excited to hear from the public now when you're ready.
Yeah, well, so I want to get the public. So I see some people here I think would probably want to speak. You, Carol Hall, you want to jump in first and give your comments?
Certainly. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Dear commissioners, staff, Mr. Winter, my name is Carol Hall. I appreciate that residents are given the opportunity to speak today. And I appreciate the difficult job that the Planning Commission has been doing. So what am I holding here? If you can see it, this is a large scroll of names all taped together. And it represents 688 signatures. You were talking about surveys and whatnot. This is our community and our visitors, mostly Carmel residents, but also visitors who bring money to our village. These pages of signatures are taped together. The scroll is over 70 feet long. You will be relieved that we are on Zoom, so I cannot unroll this scroll. It would be a lot of work if I did with little impact. So what did all these people sign? So let me read to you what these people signed. Petition to save the unique architectural character of Carmel-by-the-Sea. The following residents of Carmel love our village character, and we respectfully ask that the City Council and the Planning Commission reassess the approval process for demolitions, remodels, and new construction. Please consider the ambiance that has been Carmel for over 100 years. It is being eroded with Anywhere USA buildings, sterile facades, box-like structures, including use of excessive glass and industrial materials that do not fit into the old world charm of our village in the forest. So it's not just Carol Hall speaking, it's not just Neil Cruz speaking. This is our community speaking. And we wanted you to hear that. These pages represent people who are passionate about keeping our special Carmel character. Most don't come to meetings, are not political, are busy working, do not speak comfortably in front of others, and or are COVID intimidated. Dear Mr. Winter, please know who we are, the residents of Carmel, who have a voice, and it is growing louder by necessity. We are the vast majority of residents expressing what we want to see in the updated design guidelines. And thank you so much for hearing us, all of you.
Mr. Chair, I believe you're muted.
No, I'm not. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Carol, for your comments. Who else would like to, from the public, Mike, to make some comments at this time?
If you'd like to raise your hand and you're on the computer, go ahead under reactions. At the bottom of your screen, there's a button that says reactions. You can click on that and then click on raise hand. We'll be able to see that. If you want to unmute yourself, the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you can click on mute. If you're on a mobile phone or landline, *9 will raise your hand and *6 will unmute you.
I see a hand up with a phone number. It's got a 415 area code.
It looks like ending in 258, the cell phone ending 258. If you want to unmute yourself, go ahead.
Unmute, you can.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Swanson, and thank you, Chairman LePage and all the commissioners. Michael McWalters, Scenic Road 2 north of 11th. Mr. Winter, thank you for taking on this project. I do not envy your job here. First, I want to associate myself with the remarks of Carol Hall. She's spot on. Number two is, this is called Design Traditions 1.5 project. Is the first project that you did for us 20 years ago, is that available for us to read?
Yes, yes, the design guidelines for residential are online.
Yeah, no, Nori, it's okay. We don't, Mr. Walters, we don't typically take answers back and forth during this. So if you want to ask your question, then the chair can ask us to respond to them if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, it just, is it Mr. McClure? Is that right?
McWalters.
Okay, just go ahead and make your comments, and that's all we're looking for, comments this time. If you have a question, needs answering, just pose it, and after your comments, we'll try to answer your question.
Okay, I have one more question. Nori, I saw on your website the work you did for Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I think it was Mrs. Husband. She did a fabulous job. I went through that. Is what you're working on, when it's finished, is it going to look like the Cedar Rapids, Iowa preservation project? And I just want to go back to the first thing, which is I need directions on how to access the work you did 20 years ago on the first Design Traditions. And that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Okay, Victoria Beach, would you like to take the floor, make your comments?
Just a quick thank you to the commission. I just am really excited about all the comments you made. I thought they were just so perfectly aligned with everything that we hope for this project. And I just wanted to let you know how many people seem to be on the same page about this, including, I would argue, the folks who are concerned about the way that buildings fit or don't fit, the 688 folks who care about that, who signed that. So I feel very optimistic about this. Somebody said they don't envy the job. I would envy the job. I think it's a wonderful project, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. My only addition is something just to emphasize what Stephanie said, is if we could do outreach. I just want this to be on record, Brandon. If we could do outreach beyond the residents for the participation in these public, especially for the commercial design guidelines. I think that when I look at the list of folks who are here today, that I understand who they are. We know we have a really awesome, active community, which is one of the things I adore about this place. But I think it's harder for the business downtown folks to be apprised. So I think that's what Stephanie was hinting at a little bit. I would definitely emphasize some way to get to the chamber, or just blast the business owners and the property owners down there too. That's all. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Victoria, for your comments. Is it Jennifer Pirtle? You have your hand up. Would you like to speak? Make your comments.
I do. I think my video should be on, but it's not working for whatever reason. Anyway, my name's Jennifer Pirtle, and let's see what's going to happen. There we go. Oops, it's a mess in my house. Sorry. I sometimes live at North Carmelo, the third house northeast of 4th Avenue. And my mother is in that house. And I'm really pleased to see kind of the turnout tonight and the issues brought to the table. I'm grateful for those who hope that some of us who were in Carmel part-time and not full-time might be included in the response. I've been in and around Carmel since 1975 when I was a kid. So I've seen a lot of change in my lifetime. But I think my big concern, I hear a lot of talking about coming up with regulations. And I think I speak as an art historian and also a tenured university professor. I'm concerned that regulations are very hard to implement. And you can have a great building that meets none of the requirements and still fits in. And I think this idea that there's going to be almost a rubric for what will fit in Carmel may not actually be workable. And I say that thinking about panes of glass, right? So, some people are concerned about large panes of glass, but in California modernism in the 50s, you have my mom's house, has those, in addition with these large panes of glass. They are perfectly in keeping with 1950. They are perfectly in keeping with the architecture of that house. And I think I get a little nervous when I hear people saying, we're going to have this set of rubrics and it needs to go down a list, because that just doesn't always work in the world of art and design. And I just would hope that there might be built into the process some flexibility for thinking about what buildings really will make the most sense in Carmel. Otherwise, I'm really quite impressed by the group here on both sides. I came to it because of Carol Hall's email, so I come from that side, but I'm really impressed to see the intelligence of all of the people in the room. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Jennifer. Gabriel Sanders, I see you have your hand up. You want to unmute? Make your comments.
Yes, thank you. My name is Gabriel Sanders. I'm the Deputy Director of Monterey County Land Watch. I too am encouraged by what I'm hearing from the Planning Commission, especially what Commissioner Locke was saying about the need to look ahead to the future of both, climate adaptation, and especially with the RENA numbers that are coming down from the state. There is plenty of room for creativity, whether it's artful creativity or design and architectural, when it comes to building up and making room for more people in the village without compromising its character. I think it's all possible, because it's very clear that there's some very capable people on the commission, and that it looks like Mr. Winter's firm is going to be very much up to the task. So I look forward to seeing what comes of that. And Land Watch will be paying attention. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Gabriel. Okay, is there anyone else from the public that would like to make some comments regarding the Design 1.5 traditions? Oh, Neil Cruz. Neil, go ahead, unmute.
Thank you, staff and Carmel Planning Commissioners. Thank you, everybody, for all of the effort in planning and organization and opening this up to the public of Carmel. I'm Neil Cruz, co-chair with Carol Hall of the Carmel Preservation Association, a group that was formed months ago entirely for one reason. Carol and I have been confronted by local residents many, many times with their concerns for the loss of Carmel's village character. 600 plus petitions later, and almost a year's worth of sitting at the farmers market here in Carmel has now informed us in great detail of a very significant population, not only of residents, but equally so of visitors who are seeing Carmel, known for its magical and intimate village character, turn into just another anywhere USA. We never expected to hear from so many visitors. It was almost shocking. They told us not only that they noticed the loss, about a third of these visitors have specifically told us if Carmel continues to lose its enchanting village-like qualities, they will soon no longer bother to visit us at all. And I am not kidding you. We have many people that were witness to those comments, if you would like us to verify. You see, Carmel is the last sanctuary of its kind in the eyes of many in this area. Mr. Winter, here are a list of our concerns and requests. We do not wish to pick up and start with the last work done in the workshop under Mr. Weiner's purview and currently in draft form, as the residents were barely involved in that process at all. As to existing guidelines, why are 75% of the residents and so many visitors so unhappy with the designs in Carmel? Either the guidelines are not working or those tasked with enforcing them are not doing so. Mr. Winter, we sincerely hope that you will fully appreciate our desire to go back and change some of the existing guidelines where we deem them not performing the function of maintaining the village character. We also desire the creation of a design review board tasked specifically with the concern of maintaining village character in new designs, and that review board be populated only by people the residents of Carmel trust to both understand and maintain the village character of Carmel as defined by the residents of Carmel. Mr. Winter, I direct your attention to the sign hanging on the wall above the planning commissioners' heads. I can't help but feel we residents once again are being treated like the poor, misguided, unwashed, uneducated masses, not qualified to make decisions about architecture we wish to see in our village. But in the CPA, we have former mayors, commissioners, and former staff. We know what we're doing. We know what we feel. Please listen to us. We have a lot to say. Thank you for coming back, Nori Winter.
Thank you, Neil. Okay, is there anyone else in public that would like to make some comments? Let's see. Oh, Nancy Toomey, go ahead. I got that right. I got that right. Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
That's right too. Thank you. I would like to further support and endorse the statements that Carol and Neil have made as a resident. Shifting hats into my Carmel Residents Association hat, as I'm on the board of that organization as well. Our membership does include part-time homeowners, renters, etc., and businesses are welcome to also join. So we do cover some more of the footprint that is relevant to the stakeholders throughout our membership. We also have membership in the people that leverage beyond the 93921 zip code and love Carmel-by-the-Sea, whether they're Carmel Point, Carmel Woods, Carmel, et cetera, in the surrounding communities. So folks who are lovers and users and frequenters of our town and village are a part of the Carmel Residents Association. So they're included in that. I mean, we don't have hit all of them by any means, but we'll keep our membership informed of what's going on and encourage their participation. I would like to also supplement the efforts I think that Virginia Beach had made, or Victoria Beach. I keep wanting her to be Virginia, sorry, about the business. It's both the building owners as well as those that occupy it. When we're dealing with the commercial segment. So it really is both of those constituents that should be added to the mix. And I don't think they were intentionally excluded. I just wanted to raise that for a clarification. So there you go. That's it. And thanks so much for what you're doing. We'll be, helping the cause. So thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, for your comments. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to make some comments to the commission? Don't see any hands going up. Is there someone? Yeah, I'm just hearing some background noise there.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I don't see anyone else's hand. It doesn't look like anyone's unmuting. You could probably do a last call, and then I think you're safe to move on.
Okay, this is the last call for comments for the Design Traditions 1.5. Okay, thank you, Mr. Winter. We're happy to have you. Looks like we have a good outline for the work ahead. There's a lot of work to be done. Yes. And we appreciate everybody's comments, and I'm sure you do too. So
absolutely.
I'm sure we're going to see you many times in the next few months, next year.
That's right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have, we're still at orders of business, and the next item on the orders of business is to receive a report on the City of Carmel-by-the-Sea's draft climate adaptation plan, the action plan, and provide feedback on the draft report. So we have staff report.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Agnes Martellet. I will provide the report. Let me share my screen really quick. Okay. Can you all see the presentation? Take that as a yes. So I am here to provide a summary of the climate adaptation and action plans that were prepared by the Climate Committee over the past couple of years. So I'll provide a little bit of background on the project and the planning process that got us here. And then I will provide an overview of the climate adaptation plan, which includes a vulnerability assessment and adaptation strategies to meet those vulnerabilities, and a climate action plan, which includes a greenhouse gas inventory update, greenhouse gas forecast, reduction goals, and strategies to meet those goals. So first, a little bit on project background. This project started in fiscal year 2019-2020, and there are two elements to the project. The first is the adaptation part, which is to develop strategies to adapt the city to the changing climate. And the other is the climate action, which is to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We have been working with a climate committee that was formed in the fall of 2019. There are 8 members. We have 2 council members, Jeff Barron and Carrie Theis, 4 members of the public, including John Hill, Michael LePage, Scott Lonergan, and Lynette Zimmerman, and 2 staff members, including myself and Evan in the planning department. And we also worked with 2 consultants. Rincon Consultants helped us with the adaptation plan, and LSA Associates helped us with the action plan. So a little bit on the planning process. COVID hit very early on in the process, so we really did not get our project really going until the summer of 2020. But once we started going, it went fairly quickly. We started with some outreach to community groups and regional partners in the summer of 2020. We began at that point, and then we led a series of monthly presentations during our climate committee meetings on various climate threats and assets of the city that may be affected by them. Then in the summer of 2021, we issued our climate change vulnerability assessment, and that is, I believe, Appendix B of the Climate Adaptation Plan. Then in the fall of 2021, we did quite a bit of work. We developed the greenhouse gas inventories and forecasts. We drafted adaptation and action strategies, and we held a community workshop in November of 2021. And finally, we are now in the spring of 2022, and I am here to present the draft adaptation and action plans based on the results of the community outreach that happened throughout the process, as well as the community workshop. So starting with the climate adaptation plan, it has three main elements. It identifies the vulnerabilities of the city to the changing climate. It has strategies to adapt the city, and it includes an action plan. So first, looking at hazards, this is the list of hazards we really focused in on. We have stronger storms, wildfires, sea level rise, drought, increased temperatures, fog changes, and ocean warming. They are ordered here from the most severe and imminent threats to down to lower or less known threats. In orange, you have stronger storms and wildfires. We're already seeing those impacts. We've already seen those impacts either in Carmel or in the region. Sea level rise, drought, and increased temperatures, we're already seeing this. Drought obviously is already and continuing to be a major issue in California. However, we feel like we've already done quite a bit of work to increase our resilience to drought in the area. So we have a bit more time horizon with drought and sea level rise to really work on increasing our resilience further. And then fog changes and ocean warming, those two have potential significant impacts for our region, but the science is still being developed here. So then looking at assets to consider in climate adaptation planning in Carmel, there's three major types. There are community assets, including our residents, our visitors, or businesses, and especially our at-risk populations. Then our natural environment, our beach, our special habitats, our open spaces, and our urban forest. And then our infrastructure and built environment. And that includes our utilities, our infrastructure, including shoreline infrastructure, our critical community facilities, and our built environment. So the vulnerabilities that were identified, we've mentioned in the prior item quite a bit about it. We have parts of the Carmel are in a very high fire hazard zone. And this has impacts for our built environment, for community resilience and safety, and for our natural environment. We have a lack of a plan for at-risk community members. We also have an urban forest and sensitive habitats that are at risk from the changing weather patterns, including drought, increasing temperatures, stronger storms. We have coastal resources and infrastructure that are at risk from sea level rise. And, that includes the beach and the dunes, but then also our safety infrastructure, including our seawalls and revetments, but then also our other utilities and infrastructure that's located near the shoreline. And here you have a photo of the wastewater treatment facility that's in the Carmel River, at the mouth of Carmel River. And this is not managed by the city, but obviously its continued operation is integral to the way of life in Carmel. We also have power grid impacts from wildfires and storms that we're already facing, and drainage system issues, including an undersized drainage systems, and that needs a lot of repairs. So here are the three overarching goals we've identified to address our vulnerabilities. The first large goal is a healthy, safe, and resilient community. The second goal is a natural environment resilient to climate hazards. And then the third goal is a resilient infrastructure and built environment. So here, I'm going to go over the policies that help support each of those overarching goals. I will not go into each action into detail because there are many actions, but I will provide a summary of the actions under each policy. So the first policy to help our community resilience is to provide effective emergency preparedness and response in anticipation of potential climate-related disasters. So really here, we're trying to address updating our evacuation plan, making sure it takes into account our at-risk populations, and making sure that it is shared with the community, that people are aware, that we work with our partners, our community partners, to make sure that everyone is aware of our hazard planning. The other element that's included under this policy is to work with our regional and community partners to increase wildfire resilience through inspections and through FireWise certifications. The second policy under community resilience is to focus adaptation efforts and engagement on the most vulnerable populations. And I'll note here that I've highlighted in red the actions that would potentially involve the planning department and or the planning commission. So under this policy, we're really trying to engage the community to make sure that we address our more vulnerable populations, involve them, and make sure that there's a social support network in case of disaster. Next policies, and I'm sorry, there's a scuffle going on in the background. Next policy has to do with minimizing the health impacts of climate change. We've identified air quality as being a potential, it is likely to get reduced over time with climate change, especially during the summer with the wildfires. That photo actually on the right is from a couple years back when we had some of these bad wildfires in the region. And so this involves increasing indoor air quality by electrifying buildings and doing heat pump retrofit programs so that the housing stock is more resilient to, and the air quality inside the housing stock is more resilient to climate change. And then the next policy is to increase economic resilience by basically supporting displaced workers and working with our business partners, including the Chamber of Commerce, Visit Carmel, to develop a more resilient economy that takes care of its workers. So next, we're going into the second goal, which has to do with the natural environment. And here, you know, we already have a lot of plans in place in Carmel related to our natural environment. So the policy here really builds on our existing plans and our existing programs. And basically, we just want to update these plans to increase the resilience of our natural environment, including increasing the resilience of our urban forest and our special habitats, including the Mission Trail Nature Preserve and the North Dunes. Also, there are some actions here to look at our beach and do beach sand monitoring and sand supply analysis to really identify how quickly we're losing the beach to sea level rise. The next, we then are moving on to the next goal, which is infrastructure resilience. And the first policy here is to support greater resilience, redundancy, and reliability of local and regional infrastructure and the built environment. And there are quite a few actions under this policy. They include evaluating the feasibility of undergrounding utilities in fire hazard zones, reducing stormwater runoff by increasing the use of green infrastructure and other methods, also repairing and upsizing our storm drainage system. We also are recommending retrofitting existing critical buildings for resilience to climate hazards, increasing water conservation, and for our coastal infrastructure, conducting a coastal vulnerability study that will identify projects to ensure the long-term resilience of our coastal infrastructure. Next is policies to help continue to help infrastructure resilience, and that one is to incorporate climate change adaptation into our plans and standards. And you'll notice here everything is in red because the planning department and the planning commission will be involved in all of these efforts, some of which are already underway, like the updating of the design guidelines and incorporating climate change in those. Other plans include the general plan, the shoreline management plan, etc. So then moving on to the climate action plan. So climate action plan includes an updated greenhouse gas emissions inventory, an emissions forecast, some targets for the city to reach, and greenhouse gas reduction strategies to meet those targets, and an implementation plan. First, looking at the greenhouse gas inventory, I will just point you to the table on the right. If you look at the 3 bolded sectors, those are the sectors that generate the most greenhouse gases in our inventory. And those are on-road transportation, which is responsible for approximately 46% of our emissions. And then the use of natural gas in both residential and commercial. That's about 43%. And then solid waste is about 10%. So now looking at the forecast into the future of our greenhouse gas emissions. So if you look at the graph, the red line is our business as usual forecast. So if we did nothing and we just let people do what they do, which is to buy new cars and new equipment, new washing machines and dishwashers, we can expect a modest reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions in the city just from equipment getting more efficient over time. Added to this, the green line here shows the expected greenhouse gas emission forecast taking into account state mandated reductions. So the state always mandates improvements in efficiency, especially in the built environment, and in vehicles as well. So these are the reductions that we can expect from state mandated guidelines. Then that red crosshatch area is the delta between what the state mandated requirements, greenhouse gas reductions are, and where we actually want to be. So that dot in the middle here is our first target, which is a 2030 target of 40% reduction of our emissions below 1990 level. And then the next dot, which is all the way at 2045, all the way down, is carbon neutrality by 2045. So these are our goals for climate action. So there are 6 overarching goals that will help us meet our targets. Energy efficiency and electrification of our residential and commercial buildings, improve transportation choices, renewable energy sources, water efficiency, waste reduction, and urban forest protection and heat island effect reduction. So here again, highlighted in red are the measures that will involve the planning department or the planning commission. So first, obviously related to the built environment, planning will be heavily involved. And the measures start with doing energy efficiency training, education, incentives, and recognition for residential and commercial. So really focusing in on conducting public outreach and awareness around efficiency and electrification benefits to our residents and our businesses, and providing incentives or advertising incentives so that we get more retrofits that way. The second measure is to conduct energy efficiency and electrification in renovation projects. So this would involve conducting a feasibility study of retrofits of existing building electrification. And then based on the results of this study, identifying actions that can be required from residential and commercial energy renovation projects in major retrofits. The third measure is to conduct energy efficiency in new construction projects. So basically requiring all electric construction. I will note here that the second measure related to major retrofits is probably the one with the greatest greenhouse gas reduction benefits in Carmel due to our fully built out state. So most of the projects that we end up getting are renovations and retrofits. And so that's really where we would get the most bang for a buck. Next are reduction policies related to transportation, clean energy, and water conservation. And we have an alternative. The first measure is related to alternative transportation options. We want to reduce our reliance on automobiles. So alternative transportation includes walking, biking, developing a bicycle master plan, incentivizing ride sharing and bike to work programs, prioritizing electric vehicles, developing a green visitor program, those types of actions. Then the second measure has to do with promoting clean energy. So incentivizing solar with battery backup on new and maybe retrofit type projects. And also increasing the uptake of the renewable generation portfolio from 3CE, which is our power provider. The next measure is water conservation and landscaping. And already here we do a really great job. So continuing the implementation of our drought tolerant landscaping requirements and promoting gray water systems and rainwater harvesting. Next, we are looking at policies related to waste reduction and heat island effect reduction. The first measure has to do with reducing waste that goes to our landfill. And here we want to make sure we do a solid job of implementing the requirements of SB 1383, which requires collection of food waste from our residential as well as our commercial businesses for composting. And we've started this process in January, and we're in the process of working out the kinks. We also want to reduce contamination in our recyclables and then promote home composting and compost use. The next measure is to maintain and protect the urban forest for shade and energy savings. So the urban forest has many benefits, but one of them is also providing shade and therefore reducing temperatures on the streets and in buildings. So maintaining a healthy canopy helps with that. And then last measure here is to evaluate the feasibility of allowing cool roofs, especially in those areas where there is no tree shade. So here are the forecasted emissions, including all the climate action plan implementation measures. As you can see in blue, this is how much reduction we can expect from the implementation of this climate action plan. I will point out that with all these measures, we are meeting our 2030 goal of 40% below 1990 levels. However, you can see that we still need to have more work to do to get to our carbon neutrality goal by 2045. And so the plan here is for us to come back and evaluate the effectiveness of the work that has been done and update the plan by 2030. And also incorporate in it the state's scoping plan, the latest scoping plan that will want to go also to carbon neutrality statewide, so that we can dovetail with the state and learn from our implementation so that we can get to carbon neutrality by that date. Finally, a little bit on implementation. Obviously, these are very ambitious plans. So these are some of the recommendations from the Climate Committee to ensure that we are successful in their implementation. First is to build on existing programs and partnerships. We have existing programs and we have many existing partnerships. So really building on those and leveraging those is critical. Then is phasing implementation. We're not going to be able to do this in the next couple of years. This is a multi-year program, and phasing will help us be more successful in implementation. We'll also need to do significant public outreach and communication, because without the public, these plans, the implementation will fail. Then the committee also recommended monitoring and evaluation on a regular basis so that we can adapt as we go, as we learn, as we implement. We can adapt and maybe change as needed and as we learn. The committee also recommended hiring a grant writer / climate coordinator position to get funding for these projects, but then also help monitor and keep track of implementation. They also recommended the establishment of a sustainability commission that would help oversee the implementation of these two plans. And finally, funding is going to be critical. Some of these projects are fairly low cost. Others are going to be very expensive. So funding through grants and rebates will be part of the answer. And we're already taking advantage of some of these. But we'll also likely need to look at other sources of funding, including new fees or adjusted fees. And in some cases, assessment districts, such as for utilities undergrounding. And so any questions? Did I put everyone to sleep?
No, Agnes, we're just, it's a lot to digest, I'm sure, for everybody.
No, I'm sorry.
Are there any questions from the commissioners for Agnes? Actually, it's a very thorough report, and I think, like I said, it's a lot to take on in one sitting.
Michael, are we looking just for questions or comments?
Well, questions at this time, and then we'll go into the comments. So, okay, thank you, Agnes. Really appreciate that. Okay. So are there comments from the public at this time? I guess we need to open this up to the public for comments. So any members of the public that would like to address the Planning Commission about this climate change report? Don't see any hands going up. Don't hear anybody. Okay. Oh, I see a hand there. Mr. Doug Schmitz, you got to unmute there, Doug. There you go.
I have a question for you on this, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
It seems that 46% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation. what's the policy or goal towards addressing the visitors that come here? Because 4,000 Carmel residents aren't generating a lot of greenhouse gas emissions compared to the visitors.
So that's something we actually looked at in some detail during the process. And so it's actually detailed out a little bit in the climate action plan itself, the percentage that is from visitors versus people that commute to work in Carmel versus our residents. There are a few actions that are recommended to help reduce the visitor impacts, including a green visitor program that would incentivize use of alternative transportation, electric vehicles, working with our business partners to advertise alternative transportation to their visitors so that they maybe take advantage of shuttles to airports instead of driving, so that they also reduce their greenhouse gas emissions of their entire trip. Now, a lot of airlines are offering, offsets, carbon offsets, et cetera, so that visitors do that. So this is the way that we're addressing the visitor greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just add something for Mr. Schmidt.
Go ahead, Bob.
It's in the LSA report, which is Appendix A of Appendix A, which is the Climate Action Plan. So that will give you a good breakdown of the visitor impacts of that type of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and also all of the greenhouse gases that are emitted from visitors are not always all attributed to our community. They are split between the communities that they come through. So the report speaks to that, but it's a pretty complicated process of doing the inventory on the greenhouse gases. But the big takeaway on transportation is we have to electrify. That's the only way we're going to meet this. There's a real simple thing happening here. We got to stop burning stuff, and fossil fuel process of creating energy is burning. So we really need to have electrification, and you will see that theme throughout the climate change report, adaptation report, and the action report. So that's the big challenge. So are there any other comments or questions from the public? Don't see anybody raising their hands. Okay, I'll open it up to the commissioners for their comments. Commissioner Locke, you want to begin?
Sure. First of all, I really want to say I'm very impressed with the amount of work that was done and the depth in which you guys looked at the potentials and problems that are associated with climate change. Anias, thank you so much. And the committee that was backing you on this, I know, Michael, you were involved in that. And yeah, it's just really astounding. The report is fabulous. Comments that I have just, and I think that electrify and stop burning is a great kind of tagline on this. Things that I saw that I just wanted to comment on, reducing the reliance on automobiles goes to my comment in the previous item related to we need to find a way to provide affordable housing for the people who work in our community. We are constrained by the fact that and it was also mentioned in Anias's presentation, we're constrained by the fact that we have basically no vacant land. So the vacant land that we have available is going to be up. And I think we just have to think about it that way. So, and I know you have it in there, increasing land use density in the downtown area. Alternative transportation options and the whole concept of shuttle services. Boy, would I like to push for that. When we get into Car Week and we have some of these events, if we could have central parking somewhere and bringing people in. I mean, people come to Carmel and they don't really need to have their cars. So, and I think that goes in my, the reason for this is the whole concept, the whole thing with the quail event that takes place in Carmel Valley on Friday of Car Week. And it just stops at Carmel Valley Road. And I have been questioning for years why we don't have a shuttle service, why buses aren't employed to carry people instead of having these cars sitting there idling for hours at a time, both going in and trying to get out of there. And that goes for any of those events. And I think Car Week is primarily the week that we have a lot of transportation backup, but all summer long around here. I mean, it's always a problem. And I would also, along that line, think about it, Bay Area, visitors from the Bay Area, and the potential to bring more bus in. And I'm not going to say like the big, huge buses in, but organized transportation for people who want to come down for the weekend just to hang out. Not necessarily a big tourist group, but just people who want to get together and their ability to put together a shuttle and bring it down. Anias, I know you love reduced waste, and that's one that's next to me. Unintended consequences. I just want to mention this, and that is, I think we need to be clear about what goes where. And I was at an event last weekend at Devendorf and had some food samples from vendors or from businesses in town. And quite frankly, I honestly didn't know, does this go in the garbage? Does it go in recycle? Maybe pictures that kind of show what goes into what bin would be helpful. I live in a multifamily complex. I have neighbors that put unrecyclable goods in the recycle bin. And so some way to communicate to them, the new food waste containers. And here's an unintended consequence on it. I don't think you're supposed to be using compostable bags to store your food waste. But if I throw my food waste into that bin, it gets messy. It has to get washed. Okay, I'm a water person, you know that. But when if our complex has to wash out a bin, that bin is going into our sump that is going out to the street and going down the storm drains. So I don't have anywhere I can wash that bin without actually putting it into the storm drain. And to me, that's an unintended consequence because you're causing problems that way. So I think you guys need to think about that a little bit. I like the idea of cool roof options, and that didn't come up during our previous item, but living roofs and how that might be incorporated into design guidelines would be something to think about. And then just a comment about the water reduction and energy reduction kind of goes hand in hand. The Water Management District and CalAm both have this joint rebate program that will provide rebates for not only residential appliances, but also a number of commercial appliances, such as commercial dishwashers, not ice machines, but they're required to have efficient ice machines. But they can take advantage of that, and that would help. And so I think I'd like to work with you and making sure that information is available on the city's website. But I'm absolutely impressed. I think you guys have done a fantastic job.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Commissioner Locke. Commissioner Dell, would you like to make your comments?
What? This is really, really, really good. It's thorough and specific. A little background. About 10 years ago, when I was living in a mountain town in Colorado, a ski town, we began to focus on these topics, and I was actually the founder of a nonprofit that was focused on sustainability for the whole community. We ended up sort of being instead of hiring government employees, we ended up being the enabler. And I'll just share some of those experiences because I guess one of the things we learned is how easy it is to start doing too many things and ending up engaging in what I'll call ocean boiling. For example, we got little community about the size of Carmel, just more remote, even more remote, and in the middle of a forest, and we got very focused on emission reductions, or at least claiming emissions reductions, and we got very busy actually on focusing on what I'll call conservation energy credits, where you can claim carbon reduction by buying credits that are on the market and issued by wind farms in Wyoming that already exist. In other words, we were claiming credit for really nothing. It was greenwashing, and I can use that word because I was guilty of it. Another one was the realization, well, if we preserve this forest that surrounds us, well, that forest is a carbon sink. And we started claiming credit for that. Well, no, the forest was already there. And yes, forest health helps with that. And the third thing we got really focused on was green energy codes. And again, the lesson there is, building codes are still, by and large, and Brandon can probably weigh in on this, they're heavily influenced essentially by the creators of product in the marketplace, and essentially lobbyists that creates, it's what Stephanie said, sort of unintended consequences. So those were some hard lessons learned, but then we pivoted and really started saying, no, what can we do right here? And it's two things. What can we do to prepare for what may be inevitable? And really started thinking that might be the most important thing. And that's what I loved about your presentation. It has the whole resiliency part is, we got to do that. The most imminent, you're right, is wildfire. And then I think the next really is, what's the ocean going to do to us? And you are focused on those things. And that is spending money on your infrastructure to make sure we're ready. And some of the biggest things I can think of there, again, are forest health. Elephant in the room, again, is Pescadero Canyon, which is the biggest area of red in the adjacent area. And that requires, I don't know what it requires, probably a lot more goats up in there helping, but just I think it's a whole forest health management program where we have to work with the Pebble Beach, and I'm not even sure what the organization at Pebble Beach is, but that just seems very important. But we also, we did focus more on, in that community, forest health, defensible space, which is not, it's a very difficult thing to implement here. And in fact, most of our policies go the other way. And I think rightly so, but if we can figure out how to create at least defensible space around the town, that would seem to be money well spent. We focused on the actual creation of renewable energy. And that was two things. One was we worked with the power company to actually build a solar farm nearby, but out actually in the desert where it made sense. And we agreed with the power company that we would essentially buy the panels in that solar farm, so that we actually created renewable energy. We weren't just claiming credit from Wyoming, we actually built it. And then the other half of that was an incentive program for people to put them on their roofs. And that's a place where there's a lot of snow, so it didn't always yield to quite the results you can get here. But that's, and now with availability of these battery packs linked to that, that also gets to resiliency and not just renewable. And then the third thing we focused on was transportation. We were blessed there with a gondola that connected the two towns, and we just doubled down our efforts on getting people to ride a gondola that's always running instead of driving their cars, just as an example. So bottom line lessons learned was don't boil the ocean. Really focus, prioritize as much as you can on things that are real and things that you can really connect some dots to what we're doing here that are helping the big picture, but really helping us locally as we count on our county and state and national partners to, I hope, solve some of the bigger problems, because we can lead, but we can't solve. But great report, very good, impressed.
Thank you, Commissioner Delves. Commissioner Lehman, would you like to make your comments?
Yes, I would. Thank you so much. I thought the report was interesting. It was well done. It was amazingly comprehensive and easily understood. I'm an active participant in the building community here, and we are doing, of course, we have some mandatory, which is solar panels for new construction as well as battery backups, and electric hookups for automobiles, for electric cars. But we're doing radiant heat, induction cooktops, electric ovens, along with the solar panels and the hookups. And so we really have an all electric homes. And remember, all electric was a great thing, I think in 1940 or 30 or whatever, it was very popular to go all electric, and then gas came in. So we've got to get rid of gas. Maybe we need to incorporate some of this in our guidelines. We can certainly be first to do it. But we can say in new construction, no more gas, no gas fireplace hookups, no forced air gas, and solar panels. We can do all these things and do it well. We have solar panels ourselves on our house, which was built about 4 years ago. And I'm so sorry now that we don't have more electric appliances. And as they go, we will replace, certainly, and move to all electric. But new construction, we are using all electric. And I think we can do it. We can, I realize it's not part of the UBC right now, but we can certainly put it into our guidelines. And, I don't think we have to give bonuses to people for doing it. I think what we have to do is say, this is the way we're going to save our planet, period. And if you want your kids and your grandkids and their children to continue to survive here, this is what we need to do. And we all need to do it as communities, as states, as countries. So I know there are ways to give bonuses here. We can give bonus in coverage, we can give bonus in square footage, but I don't think we should be doing that. I think we should just get people to cooperate and just say the way you've got to insulate your house, you've got to put electric heat in it. And that's where I'm coming from. I did really enjoy your presentation. Again, I think you did a great job, and I think now we just have to start going forward with it. I like action, and I'm sure you will appreciate it, in the long run. So thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Lehman. Yeah, just a couple of final comments. This is the beginning. It's not the end. This is going to be an ongoing process for the rest of our lives here and also for our children's lives. This is something that's going to be challenging us as a society. It's a big lift. We really have to change the total way that we have created energy. I mean, fossil fuels right now, they permeate every aspect of our lives. And, one of the ways, though, that we're going to deal with this is through education, making people realize the consequences of what their lifestyle entails. And climate change is already here. We all know it. We've all seen it. We see it every day. We know it's changing. And I think in the back of our minds, we all have this, this fear that some event's going to happen here pretty quickly. And so this report really starts that process. We really tried to address everything, as you can see. A lot of really great work has gone into this, and I think this is something our community can be proud of, get behind, and really work towards these goals. So thanks for all your comments, and we'll be talking about this more and more. And obviously, this is going to play into the Design Traditions 1.5, because a lot of what we're talking about in terms of building has to do with, the electrification and what types of materials we use. So, okay, I think we've covered that topic, unless Director has any more comments on it. Agnes, you good? Okay, great presentation. Anything you want to add, Brandon?
No, sir, I couldn't do any better.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda tonight are the public hearings. And the first item is recommended for continuance. This is DS 21-362. It's California Coast LLC. It's consideration of a concept design study for demolition of existing house, but it's recommended to continue this. So are there any comments from staff about this?
No, Mr. Chair. I think the short, brief staff memo we put forward lays out why we're continuing. We are recommending the commission continue this.
Okay. Are there any comments from the public about the recommended continuation? Okay, I don't hear any. Just to speed things up, I'm going to make a motion that we continue this item until a date uncertain.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion that's made and second to continue the item. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bolton?
Oh,
Commissioner Delps? Yes, sorry.
Yeah,
Commissioner
yes.
Delps?
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman?
yes.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
Chair LePage?
Yes. Okay, the motion is carried. Okay, the next item on the public hearings is item number 7. This is the capital improvement plan consistency determination. This is to determine if the capital improvement plan is consistent with the general plan. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Herrera and I, just like we did last year, will be tag teaming this presentation for you that I'm sure each of you has been waiting 12 months for, very excitedly, to be here talking once again about consistency determination for the CIP. So with that, as you recall, the CIP approval process has multiple steps. We've already been to the city council. They did select those CIP projects. So what you have in front of you are the selected projects. Tonight, you are making a consistency determination with general plan on May 17th. Next week, we're having a special meeting of the city council, which we would love everybody to attend from the public. It's a workshop on reviewing the operations budget and the CIP. It's unlikely that any changes will be made to the CIP because they've already reviewed that, but it is possible. But this is the list of projects. And then finally, adoption happens in June because, as you all know, the budget becomes operational July 1. So what are we looking for tonight? Code sections from both the government code and our local code require that the Planning Commission review the draft CIP and provide a determination of whether or not the projects on here are consistent with our general plan. The overall purpose of this is the city shouldn't be doing projects to ourselves or for ourselves that are inconsistent with our general plan. So the city council or the Planning Commission is the ultimate arbiter of that to determine if those projects are consistent with our general plan. Tonight's review does not include merits of projects, fiscal probability of it getting done, timelines, anything like that. It's really just, is the project consistent with our general plan? In total, we've got 34 projects broken into 4 categories, just like we did last year, and those are detailed in the staff report for you. Our recommendation going forward is that all projects are consistent with a general plan, but ultimately it's up to the Planning Commission to adopt that resolution stating such a finding. So with that, I am going to, hopefully through the magic of PowerPoint, yes, it looks like it's working, pull up the Excel matrix for you. There we go. Everybody can see that, I hope.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do, just like we did last year, Bob's going to run you through the first part of the project, explaining what the project is, description, just a brief, permitting, and then I'll run through the CEQA stuff and the consistency analysis. So Bob, take it away. We'll just go down the list here together.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Brandon, and good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. This will be just a slightly longer than last year, only because we have more quantity of projects. But here we go. The first row is library master plan. This is to have an architect look at both the Harrison Memorial Library and Park Bench Library. And what's been happening in the past is that projects have happened incrementally or without a clear vision of the long term. So this is working with an architect to develop a master plan, so we'll be able to identify projects and plan for projects ahead of the curve, and then it becomes a capital program unto itself over time. The second project is the police station renovation project. The commission has seen this phase of the project a number of times a few years ago. The project was bid, but it was put on hold when COVID hit. This project was basically there's some abatement of asbestos. It's an ADA upgrades, including an ADA accessibility ramp to the front doors. The front doors would be different, accessible. We would have an accessible restroom off the lobby, some modifications to the west wing of the building, new roofing, replacement of the mansard shingles, and things of that nature. There wasn't a lot of other interior work proposed, other than mechanical and electrical equipment. I believe I'll go to the next one. Phase 2 is a new phase that has not yet been designed. This would be to include expansion potentially for a community room / emergency operations center. It would include adding a report taking area. It'd be modifying and upgrading the locker rooms, adding EV charging stations. And that's the intent of the additional upgrades. However, the building code may require us to, when we do these additions, may require building-wide additional work, such as electrical system upgraded wiring throughout the building, seismic upgrades, additional ADA facilities, fire sprinklers, that type of thing. Next project is our annual ADA upgrades. This will be the 5th year. These are really for small projects that are mostly done in-house or by vendors. It includes anything from railings to ramps to partitions in park restrooms that are ADA compliant. So a real variety pack. There's also, we've done some water fountains to be ADA compliant. The next project, Brandon, number 5.
Bob, I'm just going to keep it on this slide, so I'll run back through those first 4 before we change the screen. So my part isn't going to be nearly as long as Bob's. Certainly much more interesting, though. So my part, just to tell you, really is these are all we find either categorically exempt under CEQA for the simple ones, existing facilities or mining construction, or either not a project. They just don't qualify as a project because they're more like a study or a plan. As you can see from the matrix here, all are consistent in our opinion for various reasons. Public service, maintenance of public protection. These are all plans. These are all code sections from our general plan. So you can see if you have questions when we get to the end of certain general plan consistency sections, I'm happy to go back through them, but I think you've all read them. We put them up on the screen. So rather than me belaboring that, I'll move on to the next section. Just we are recommending all of these projects are consistent.
Okay, I'll stop yawning and go to the next project. Next one is a backup generator at the Harrison Memorial Library. This is kind of a project that we've looked at in the past. Don't have an easy place to locate this, so there'll be some additional site investigation work to be done, but we do need a backup generator for the IT and backup our servers to back up our servers in the basement of that building. The next project is the City Hall retaining wall. This is located on the south parking lot area of City Hall. At first, it just appears that the planter wall is simply failing and falling down. It's more to it than that. We're going to have to remove that planter wall, underpin the concrete footings of the existing building, and then reconstruct the planter wall. The next project is to simply replace the roof on City Hall so that it doesn't continue to rain into the building. And we know it's a historic building for both the last two projects. The next one, electrical panel upgrades design. As the use of our technology has increased the need for electrical systems, as well as we want to really increase the number of EV charging stations, we need to look at the electrical panels. We're going to start first with the City Hall, Public Works, Sunset Center, Vista, Lobos. These electrical panels are at capacity today, so it cannot accommodate additional EV chargers or additional electric loads, even though we've lightened the load, replacing all the LED lights in these facilities. The next is facility inspections. This would be for all city buildings. We did have a condition assessment done about 10 years ago, but it's very superficial. It just talked about the type of structure, the data was constructed, the square footage. This proposed project would go a step further and look at all the equipment to identify, for example, when will the boiler need to be replaced? How many more years do we have until the roof should be replaced? So it'll be more specific, but again, it's a inspection and report only. There's not no work is taking place.
Thanks, Bob. And once again, you can see these are all either categorically exempt or not a project. It's worth noting that these two projects here on historic buildings are categorically exempt under 15331, which is rehabilitation or protection of historical resources. And once again, we have found that all of these are consistent with the general plan sections listed out here in the matrix.
Okay, we're on the home stretch of facilities and buildings. Project 10 is at the Harrison Memorial Library. This project would include painting the exterior and the interior of the building and installing new carpeting. The carpeting would be phased later on in the project, but we kind of consider it all lumped together as one project at this point. The next project, number 11, was kind of spearheaded as a result of the climate committee and the climate strategies that Anya's talked about. This particular project, the thought here is to look at the police, public works, youth center, and Vista Lobos facility. We do have a backup generator today that runs on diesel. The thought here is if we have a long-term power outage for whatever reason, our diesel is only good for about 2 days. And it would be also very difficult to find new diesel if there's a mass catastrophe. So this is to look at long-term, for long duration power outages and how we can become more resilient for power failures on these particular buildings. But then this would kind of be a pilot project, and we would do this for future projects down the road in accordance with the climate action plan. Scout House renovation. This would not be a city project. It is a city-owned facility. The thought here is to have a contract with a private entity who would pay for the renovations, both the exterior and the interior renovations, meeting the requirements of the city, of course. And the biggest challenge there is to meet all the ADA requirements, which the building does not meet at this point. The next is the Sunset Center hazardous materials remediation and exterior painting project, as well as cottage window repairs and replacements. We did hazardous material testing recently on these buildings. The exterior paint is filled with lead. There's only a little bit of asbestos around the windows, but the paint is filled with lead, and that's a big problem. So this project would be to, like, the first phase of remediating the lead paint and painting as far as we can with the funding we have on the exterior of Sunset Center, and replacing some of those old windows in the cottage. And the last of the facilities and buildings is the Vista Lobos interior remodel. This is design only. the thought here is that as we're starting to staff back up to meet the levels pre-COVID, we're really bursting at the seams. We need more space. The thought here is to take the existing conference room at Vista Lobos and do minor renovations just to the conference room to allow for a subsequent year modular office space. It would not include the renovation of the rest of the building, although that does need to be done at some point. That's all for those projects.
Thanks, Bob. And once again, you can see why they're categorically exempting these, or they're not projects. We have a few on the historic list as well, so we rehabilitating, and we do find that these are all consistent for the various general plan policies listed in the far right-hand column once again.
Okay. Now we're looking at computer equipment, other miscellaneous equipment, vehicles, those types of things. So project 15, a radio antenna. This is a project that's already been started, but it's to replace existing radio antenna on top of the police station with a new modern antenna. Go in the same location. I think that's all there is to say about that. The next project is to purchase an ambulance, as well as to equip the ambulance and with an automated external defibrillator device. And that would replace the older ambulance that's really no longer reliable. The next project is just really a lease payment. It's payment number 2 of 6 for the police radios that were purchased last year. The next project is in Brandon's shop. If you noticed, if you've been to planning recently, you notice there's a whole lot of less filing cabinets because about half of the files, property files, have been converted into, have been digitized and are accessible off our GIS mapping tool. So this would be phase 2 to complete that project. The next project is to purchase 2 residential electric vehicles for the community planning and building department to be more efficient. Inspections, right now they have the 1 vehicle that they were proposing to sell, and they would have the 2 fancy golf cart size vehicles to get around town. It would not need EV chargers, though. It would be 120 volt plug-in ready. The next project is a street sweeper. We are leaving no stone unturned to be able to purchase an electric street sweeper. We think we can do that. And there's grant funding from 3CE to help us with that purchase. And that would have essentially 0 emissions if we're successful. And the last project in this category is an uninterruptible power supply. It's just a fancy word for saying battery backup systems for the IT equipment. And this is, we've had this project in the past. It's just another round of providing that equipment for our IT equipment.
Thanks, Bob. Once again, most of these, I'll say, save 1 is not a project, just the radio antenna. So we've got 1 categorically exempt project, and the rest are not a project. I think it's worth highlighting that both Public Works and Community Planning and Building are taking the recommendations of our climate action plan seriously. We're looking at trading out our gas-powered inspection car 1 to create enough room with rebates and selling this car to get 2 electric vehicles for inspections. And then, like Bob said, he's looking at changing out a pretty big piece of equipment with a big polluting engine to an electric street sweeper. So that's worth highlighting. And as you can see, we do feel after analysis that all of these items are consistent with our general plan for the reasons laid out here in the right-hand column.
Okay, now we move on to the natural resources. This project is a carryover. This is to abandon the water well that exists in Mission Trail Nature Preserve. There's also, it's adjacent to a stone pump house and an above ground steel water tank. So this project would be decommissioned and abandon the water well in place and to remove the other facilities. And of course, we would restore the vegetation once that demolition work is completed. The next project is the forest management plan. The good news is that we did get a significant grant from CAL FIRE to help us upgrade that plan. And that plan will be presented to the Planning Commission at a future date. The next project is kind of 2 projects that have been merged together. It's the beach sand survey that Anya's mentioned in her report, as well as a sea level rise coastal engineering report. This would be to really get a good detailed look at the retaining walls, the revetments, all the infrastructure along the bluffs at the beach, to kind of see what projects we need to do first, second, and third to make sure that they can handle the sea level rise. The next project is Mission Trail Nature Preserve stream stability projects. We do have 3 small drainage projects at the south end of the park preserve over by Rio Road. Those projects are already in design, and this also now includes the construction of those construction of those 3 drainage projects once we get the permits. The next project it's essentially a funding source for beautification projects, whether that be for additional upgrades at the medians along Ocean Avenue or tree wells or things of that nature, or potentially providing materials to our volunteer group so that they can proceed with some projects. And the last for the natural resources is North Dune habitat restoration. This has been an ongoing and very successful program. So this would include continuing the biological monitoring, and we believe we'll be getting some donations so that we can install split rail fencing along Ocean and San Antonio to essentially define a better boundary for the habitat, and also an interpretive sign or 2. I think that's it for those. Over to you.
Yeah, once again, since we're operating now within the natural resources category, the CEQA level does go up on some of these because they do have impacts on the environment. They're good impacts, but they still need to be studied and analyzed and noticed under CEQA. So you have, the well and the dune and the Mission Trail projects requiring at least an initial study with possible mitigations. The rest of the projects we plan to exempt, at least based on what we can tell from the project right now. And once again, we do find all these consistent for the various general plan policies laid out on the right-hand side.
Okay, we're up to the home stretch. These are physical infrastructure projects. The first one is a carryover project for annual paving. This would be paving rehabilitation along Junipero from 3rd to Ocean, San Carlos from 8th to 13th, and possibly if there's funding, we'll be doing a San Antonio. This project does include our first official bike route on San Carlos between 8th and 13th, and landscape median islands, and sidewalk repairs. The next project, number 29, scenic pathway barrier rails. This is to replace failing barrier rails along the scenic pathway, as well as to install barrier rails where they are missing today. That's kind of a 2-part project. One part will be is intended to be done by Cartwell Cares, our volunteer group, and one would be a city-funded project and city-sponsored project. The next project is wayfinding signs, also a carryover. This is using TAMC funding to install up to, I believe, 18 new signs to direct pedestrians, bicyclists, and vehicles to which way to get to the beach, which way to downtown, which way to Sunset Center, those types of things. The next project is a fairly large scale. This is to for our drainage system repairs in accordance with our storm drain master plan. We have bottlenecks in our system. We have repairs to make. This would be all the design work, no construction yet, but all the design work necessary to repair the 6 biggest problems in our storm drain system. The last project is our annual paving project. For this new fiscal year, we're proposing concrete streets. That was approved by the council. This would include Ocean Avenue from Monteverde to San Antonio, and the intersections of San Carlos at 5th, San Carlos at 6th. One of the things that is proposed for this project is along Ocean Avenue to provide a bike and pedestrian pathway. So we have done some very preliminary exploration of that possibility. It would not be located within the concrete area of the street. It would be off to the side where the sidewalks are. So a lot of work to be done, but the thought here is to have an east-west bike route up at Ocean Avenue. The current circulation element in the general plan shows that bike route east-west along 8th Avenue. So this would be a shift in that as well. The next project is the Leolo footbridge at the north end of the Doolittle Trail and Mission Trail Nature Preserve. This is a volunteer-sponsored project. It's under design now. And the last would be split rail fencing along the medians on Ocean Avenue. This item is sponsored by the Carmel Resident Association. It goes before the Forest and Beach Commission tomorrow night, and it will be over to the Planning Commission next month, if all goes well. And that's it.
Thanks, Bob. And then just to round things up, once again, mostly categorically exempt projects here are all categorically exempt. And once again, consistent based on my analysis, our team's analysis with the general plan policies that are laid out in the far right-hand column. With that, we do conclude our presentation of this year's draft CIP and are recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution you were given, determining that the Carmel-by-the-Sea FY 21-22 and 22-23 CIP is consistent with the general plan. And that concludes our presentation. We're available for questions.
Are there any questions from the commissioners? Don't see any questions for you. Okay. All right. So I'll open it up to the public for any public comments. Is there any from the public that would like to comment on the whether or not the CIP is consistent with the general plan? That is what is being asked tonight. This is not about the individual projects. This is about whether the projects are consistent with the general plan. Okay, I don't see any hands going up. So open it up to the commissioners. Once again, I want to remind the commissioners, this is determine consistency with the general plan. If you have opinions about each project, I think this is not the time for that. If you want to become, if we want to become involved in the projects, that happens during the consideration at council or the workshops. Tonight, we are just considering consistency with the general plan. So having said that, Commissioner Lehman, would you like to begin?
Sure. I thought it was a really complete report and easy to follow. Thank you. And to stay with you on it, Bob and Brandon. So I have no objection to an approval.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Locke?
Agree.
Well said. Commissioner Dels?
I just want to thank you for the large print version of this thing, Brandon. That was much easier to digest.
Yeah, hopefully everyone saw that email. I did send it only to your city email accounts, kind of testing you, make sure you're all actually using those.
But I'm good. I think these things are all consistent. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the staff. I think they did a great presentation on this. I love the matrix. Did we do that last year?
Last year was the first year we did that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was really, really good work. Just made it really, really coherent. And I think it was a good exercise too. So having said that, we have a resolution I haven't read the resolution here. Let me get that up here.
I can put up my screen, Mr. Chair, which is really all we're asking tonight.
You have it there? Okay, so do we have a motion to adopt the resolution determining the Carmel-by-the-Sea fiscal year 2021-22, 2022-23 capital improvement plan is consistent with the city's general plan?
So move.
I could. I second it.
Okay, you gotta be quick on this one. Assuming there's no more discussion, roll call, please.
Commissioner Delves?
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman?
Yes.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
Chair LePage?
Yes, the motion is carried. Okay, thank you, guys. Okay. Next item on public hearings is item number 8. This is a design study. It's a DS 21-211. This is the Racelift project, consideration of final design study for additions totaling 530 square feet to a 1,650 square foot two-story residence located on a double frontage lot on Scenic Road 3 northwest of 13th Avenue. The staff report, please.
Well, thank you, Chair LePage, and good afternoon. So the project before the commission this afternoon is the final details review for the Ratcliffe project. So the project site is just over 4,600 square feet. It is a double frontage lot. So it has a front yard on San Antonio as well as a front yard on Scenic. The existing residence is two-story, 1,650 square feet. It is non-conforming with respect to height because it exceeds the 18-foot limit in the Beach and Riparian Overlay District. So that's an existing non-conformity. The applicant is proposing 530 square feet net additions, including a new detached garage on San Antonio that is outside of the front yard setback. So as we talked about during the concept phase of the project, it is located in a number of overlay districts. And with that comes certain requirements, such as preparation of drainage plans. And all of those requirements have been made conditions of approval. So again, because the project is in the Beach and Riparian Overlay District, building height is limited to 18 feet. This is an existing nonconformity. And so we're just documenting what the existing ridge and plate heights are. The applicant is not proposing to change those as part of the project. Staff has included a special condition that if the second story ridge beam or the structural roof framing is removed, the height of the building will need to be brought into conformance with current standards. So now I'm going to walk through the final details for the project. You did see some of these at the concept level. The proposed building materials include horizontal natural age cedar with a clear sealer. And this is proposed on the upper floor with board formed concrete on the lower floor. The board formed concrete would have an 8-inch rough sawn plank finish. And the proposed roof material is a standing seam metal. The plans identify it in bronze. The applicant may want the option to do bronze or black. So something that the council or the commission can consider this evening. Condition of approval number 29 requires the applicant to submit the product information for the roof. Just prior to the meeting, I did get some product information. And the applicant is proposing to use the Western States metal roofing, which has a very high matte finish and is found to be acceptable on other projects. With respect to windows and doors, the applicant is proposing metal clad wood for the windows and most of the doors. The front entry door is proposed to be a glass pivot door, and the garage door is proposed to be a metal sectional door. Condition of approval number 30 requires the applicant to submit the product information for all windows and doors prior to issuance of a building permit. Staff does want to note that the residential design guidelines do speak to garage doors and state that they should be designed to provide visual interest or blend with the background materials. It goes on to say that a standard overhead garage door is discouraged. So staff is asking the Planning Commission to consider whether a metal sectional door is appropriate for this project or if an alternative material should be considered. And also there's no skylights as part of the project. With respect to the driveway, the applicant is proposing an impermeable stepping stone paving block system in varying widths. The paving blocks amount to about 65 square feet of site coverage on the property, and the driveway is extended into the right-of-way as recommended by the residential design guidelines. For final details review, staff did not get a representative photo of the material showing a color or finish. So the Planning Commission could provide direction to staff and the applicant on the design and material. And you could consider adding a special condition of approval as appropriate. Regarding landscaping, the applicant did provide a preliminary landscape plan. Unfortunately, I was not able to give the city forester enough time to review and comment on it prior to this hearing. So condition of approval number 9 requires that the plan be approved prior to an issuance of a building permit. And the applicant does understand that there may be modifications to the plant palette once the city forester has had an opportunity to review it. Also, staff has included condition of approval number 28, which requires that right-of-way landscaping be included in the final landscape plan. So with respect to fences and walls, there are a couple different materials proposed along Scenic Road, which is on the left-hand side of this site plan. The proposed material is a horizontal wood. And then on San Antonio, we have some board-formed concrete and some metal panels. So I'm going to walk through the different styles just briefly. So starting along Scenic, the proposed fence material is a horizontal wood. The intent is to match the aged cedar on the second floor of the residence. The detail shows that there is a minimal amount of spacing. However, the rendering shows the boards with no spacing. So staff is seeking direction from the commission on what an appropriate spacing would be in order to achieve, filtered views of the garden as recommended by the design guidelines. Along San Antonio, there are 3 different materials. So starting on the right-hand side, there's a wood fence that comes out from the side yard. And then on the left-hand side of the garage, there are some metal fence panels. And then to the left of that is board-formed concrete. So a variety of materials along San Antonio. Staff is looking for some direction from the commission on whether the mix of materials is appropriate. And lastly, a metal gate is proposed. This gate would be accessed off of San Antonio. However, it doesn't face the street. So it's oriented a little bit inwards towards the site and would not be as visible as it would be if it was fronting on the street. But again, the materials, staff is just looking for some feedback and any special conditions as appropriate. So with respect to lighting, the commission did see this lighting plan at the concept stage, and both the proposed light fixtures do meet the lumen levels, and actually the proposed mini drive star light, there's only 2 of those proposed. Those are on the north side of the driveway. They have a very low lumen level of 40 lumens. The residential design guidelines do speak to light fixtures directing light downwards. And because these are flush mounted to the ground, you can't go down much further than that. So the light does go out more horizontally. Staff still feels that it meets the intent of the design guidelines, and with the very low lumen level would be appropriate to provide just enough light for a vehicle to navigate on the drive strips. The other light fixture proposed is a recessed wall light. All the lights are spaced 10 feet apart, and they're located along pathways and outdoor use areas for safety. Staff did not receive a light fixture detail for any fixtures on the home. And so condition of approval number 15 requires that the product information be submitted with the building permit application. With respect to site coverage, the existing site does exceed maximum site coverage allowances. The project is required to reduce site coverage by 1,060 square feet. The applicant is proposing to reduce it by 1,084 square feet. And so the project meets the requirements for site coverage. And then here is just a list of the conditions that were placed on the concept review. The project did go through volume study and passed. And then there's references here to the conditions of approval that speak to underground and utilities, the non-conforming height, the tree planting requirement. So all of these have been addressed between concept and final. So lastly, just in summary, staff is looking for some direction from the Planning Commission on the appropriateness of the metal sectional garage door, the color and finish of the driveway paving blocks, whether the horizontal wood fence on Scenic is an appropriate design for the project and what the spacing between the fence boards should be. Also looking for feedback on the fence and wall materials along San Antonio, and then the mini drive star light as well. With that, staff's recommendation is that the commission approve the design study with conditions. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for staff from the commissioners? Mr. Lehman, do you have a question?
No, I don't. Not at this time.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Marnie. All right. I see Mr. Sterling's here. I assume you're going to be making your presentation, Mr. Sterling.
Yes. Good afternoon or good evening, I guess. We're into the evening now. So hope we're all doing well. Thank you, Marnie, for the presentation. And for the record, Braden Sterling, Sterling Huddleston Architecture. I just thought I'd quickly go through just a few of the loose ends and then open it up for any questioning. I did want to point out a few of the very minor changes that we made to the architecture from the last time we met. One of them, which I guess wouldn't be naturally or little per se, but we did remove the chimney off of the architecture. I don't know if Marty has that available just to show. I think I saw it in the first, and I just wanted to point that out. I thought it was a nice improvement, and it was unnecessary, and I think neighbors and et cetera will all appreciate the reduced mass that was a result of that. Regards to roofing, we did go ahead and submit to Marnie earlier today some of the our roofing samples, which also have a very low reflectivity data rating on them. So that can be reviewed and looked at. We can discuss further if you'd like. And I think, Marnie, this photo here is from the original proposal, and then the other revised drawings, which maybe you don't. Yeah, they would be in that set. Thank you for fumbling through all this data here. Sorry, it's probably deep in the set. I can feel it coming. Yeah, there we go. So I just wanted to point to the top rendering there, and again, just the reduction in the massing that we created on that. To discuss the garage door, it's actually it's a cedar veneered frame. So the garage door is to match the materials on the house, and it will have approximately every 12 inches a horizontal half-inch reglet, which will be to match the roofing, which will be a dark, either a black or a bronze color inlet. So it is not a metal sectional per se. It is a cedar product that will match the exterior siding. The fencing, I wanted to point out some of the design intent along Scenic with our fence. We have lowered the fence to 42 inches, so I think that makes the house feel a little more inviting. It does present well on Scenic. If you recall, as you come down Scenic on that particular stretch, the house is set to an angle. So what you're viewing is the corner of of the property line as you come towards the house. And what we've done is we've staggered the fence, and on those returns are open with a horizontal cable rail or a bar, which provides complete transparency into the gardens. So you won't have this solid fence look as you were to come around with your vehicle on scenic. And again, lowering the fence, and then materials that I think will weather well and just become part of the landscape eventually. So also the steel, I just wanted to make some notes on that. Our steel, which is what we're proposing, is a natural product. So it will come with, it's a cold rolled steel. It comes with a mill scale from the factory. And it's a really beautiful product, and it ages in time. It actually has its own oils that resist the sea air, and it maintains a combination of dark blues, grays, and some mill scale on there that really makes it feel like a natural product. So we like to use that in wherever we have a small wall or a gate. That was the proposal for those finishes. So that's just my quick response to a few of the loose ends. I did talk to Marnie a few days ago, and we did discuss that anything that is pending, such as an exterior sconce, et cetera, we were happy to do that as a condition. We do have one picked out, but I would like to look at it in more detail. It is an Atlantis sconce that is nice. We've used it on other projects in town, but again, I'd like to look at it more in depth rather than just propose that at this time. So with that, I'll happy to answer any questions.
Braden, could you explain to me how you're constructing that fence? You say you're going to have a cable. Is there going to be a board and then a cable? I mean, what's?
Yeah. So in this rendering here, what you're seeing is the fence. There's a section there, and then it drops to the left, and then it drops again to the left. And right where Marnie's little pan hand is, there are open sections of the fence that allow for transparency. Those are returns. When we return a fence like that, we just do a cable rail that would be at approximately 4 inches on center that allows for any animal.
Okay, so the return has the cable rail.
Yes, yeah. And
okay.
So as you come down scenic, you're presented with that open staggered fence and those cable rails, so you'll see into the landscape rather than a solid fence.
Okay, now I understand. Okay, and then did you have a paver picked out yet, or you're saying you're looking at some, or?
Yeah, actually, Simon Phillips, our landscape architect, is here on the call, and he and I have talked about a few options. I can pose that question back to him if you'd like to talk, Simon.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Simon Phillips, I'm the landscape architect. What we're looking at is a natural stone material, something that picks up on a little bit of the tans and the sands of Carmel stones, but still something that ties in a little bit with the contemporary palette on the architecture. So trying to stay away from the grays, getting a little bit of warmth into the material, and more than likely will be a granite. I do have an image here if you'd like me to share it. I could pull it up and show you. So this was the image that we were looking at. It's a granite material, so it's got obviously good durability for vehicles, but it does have a little bit of that kind of sand, tan, warmth coming through it, but it still ties in with the contemporary palette on the house.
And it's a sand set or a crust rock, base rock of some type.
Yeah, we're actually looking at probably wet setting it because there is quite a grade dropping down from the street to the garage, and just worry about movement on that with the open set jointed paving, which we have here if this is all sand set. So it would get wet set on individual pads.
So it wouldn't be permeable?
The joints obviously would be permeable, but the pad themselves would not be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant or the landscape architect from the commission? Commissioner Lehman?
Yeah, Braden, I still love the house. I love the change, and I think it's fabulous. Could I look at that gate in the back again? I can't remember whether it was 60 inches or 6 feet. It's near the garage.
I can pull that up and show it again if you want.
Okay, great.
One here. So the way this works in plan view is we have the face of the garage and then the board form concrete wall running down to the south. And then the gate actually sits inside that wall. So it doesn't present itself straight onto the street. What you're seeing from the street is just an opening between the two concrete elements. So the gate actually sits here on the south side. And then in elevation, which one was it? It was this one here. So we're looking at using the metal again to pick up on some of that architectural palette. And it would be an open horizontal kind of flat bar fence. So you would see, gate. So you would see through this as well from inside to outside.
Is there a reason that it has to be 6 feet? Could it be lower is what I'm getting at. I think our guidelines, because are you in the setback?
We're not. We're behind the setback with all of this. So the setback line is running along here, and then we are inside outside the setback.
You're outside the setback.
Right. So this is the setback line here. This red dash line.
You're behind the setback, right?
Yeah.
Behind the setback.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Just for clarification.
I think I'd like to add, Gail, just for clarity, the elevation of the street and the elevation of the terrace, the hotel across the street, gives kind of a looming view down into this property. So height is beneficial for them in terms of privacy from that commercial use across the street.
Yeah, I get it.
Commissioner Dells, did you have a question?
Gail just asked it, so I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Open up to the public. Is there anybody from the public that want to make any comments regarding this application? I don't see any hands going up. I don't hear anybody. So I'm going to close the public comments. Open it up to the commission. Commissioner Lehman, you want to begin, or?
Sure. I like everything about this project. You know, I love getting rid of that blue, big, tall rectangle, and it doesn't seem tall anymore because you've done all this horizontal members across the front and bisected it, and I think it's terrific. So I understand the need for the privacy from the hotel. So otherwise I would object to that gate being so high, but I'm not going to. So I think it's a great job, and I'm really going to be pleased. I walk scenic just about every day, and I'd be thrilled walking past that instead of what's there right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lehman. Commissioner Dells, your comments?
Yeah, I agree. I think Gail said it well, that you've kind of taken this horizontal blue thing or vertical blue thing and turned it into a horizontal, almost prairie-esque, pretty home. And on the fencing, both front and back, I think it's tasteful and consistent with the horizontal themes, and something that we might object to in a different spot. I agree that, on the front side from scenic, just the nature of scenic, I think you're entitled to a little more privacy from the street, and also on San Antonio, with the hotel behind you and the topography, that your proposed fencing and gating are in fact appropriate. Beautiful house. Well done.
Thank you, Commissioner Dells. Commissioner Locke?
Well, I agree with all of the previous comments. Braden, I think it's a beautiful project. I did not hear, and I might have totally missed this, but the color question about the roof, I would prefer the bronze color over black, just because I think it blends in better with the landscape. But yeah, I think it's just a very nice project, and I agree with everything everybody said.
Okay, I think this is a great example of context and acknowledging what the context is, and then coming up with a design which really reflects a lot of the elements down there. You know, the fog, the colors of just that whole environment down there, which everybody knows, which is really kind of most of the time it's a real filtered kind of light situation we get. This time of year it's really bright, but a lot of the year in the summer it's very filtered, and this house really reflects that. Plus, it's just really demonstrates that a lot of really intelligent thought has gone into reworking this existing house and really making it a piece of beautiful architecture. And I think all these ideas that you worked out on the final here are really great. I really like that fence treatment, how you created some privacy, you've lowered it, but you've created openness with those setbacks. I think that's very creative. So yeah, congratulations on a really great design. So I had the resolution open here, and did you have somebody have a comment there?
No, I was going to give you a.
Yeah, I've got it open here. The special conditions are special condition 27, which is about the non-conforming second story ridge height. Any changes? 28 is include a right-of-way landscape plan. 29 was the metal roof. We had some comments on that. I think the applicant already submitted a sample, so they've already met that. And then the window and door material, they're going to submit a sample. And then there was, I think staff wanted to know if we want to have them submit a sample for the paving as a special condition. So that's what we have. One of the commissioners want to make a motion based on the resolution?
I'll make a motion, but there's one other thing that we maybe could get a photo of when you submit it to Marnie, and those are the lighting that will be on the exterior of the house, which usually we see at this point. So if we could get that, and maybe they could circulate it to us as a photo online in an email, that would be great, with some of the specs on it. So I move that DS 21-211 Radcliffe, the final design study on Scenic Road 3 northeast of 13th Avenue. I move for approval.
Based upon the
conditions that have already been enumerated.
Based on special conditions.
Special conditions and the condition of getting a photo and the specs of the exterior light that will be on the house.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to accept the resolution for approval as per staff with the added special condition that the applicant will submit information on the light. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Delves?
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman?
Yes.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
Chair LePage?
Yes, motion is carried. Thank you. It's great.
Thank you,
design.
everybody. We appreciate it.
Okay, that brings us to our last item on the public hearing, which is number 9. This is an appeal. It's appeal 21-232, the Crest project. Appeal. That's consideration of an appeal from the approval of a track 1 design study DS21-078 Crest for the removal and replacement of 625 square foot patio, the addition of a seat wall, landscape lighting, and a new fire pit located at on Lincoln Street 2 northwest of 10th Avenue. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair LePage. So I'm going to start by going through a little bit of the background. There we go. So this is a 4,000 square foot lot. Back in December of 2020, a stop work order was issued for the reconstruction of a patio without permits. The work also included a new seat wall, landscape lighting, and a gas fire pit. The owner subsequently applied for a design study, which was approved by staff in June of 2021. And the approval was then appealed by the south neighbor due to concerns regarding drainage and privacy. So the patio was constructed at a higher elevation, and it covered a greater area of the natural soil and is also impervious. So the neighbor had concerns about runoff from the patio being directed onto his property. Additionally, a new fixed gas barbecue was to be installed on the south side of the raised deck, and this created some potential privacy concerns to the south neighbor. So the Planning Commission first saw this appeal at your February meeting, and you accepted staff's recommendations, which are listed here on the slide. And those included to reduce the total site coverage to no more than 556 square feet, to reconstruct the patio at grade instead of being elevated above the grade, to set the patio in sand to facilitate on-site percolation, to submit a revised drainage plan showing how all rainwater would be retained on site. Also to include the planting of new trees in consultation with the city forester, and then identifying some privacy landscaping on the south side of the deck at the barbecue. The commission directed us to return for review and approval. So the applicant has made some pretty significant modifications to the project in order to comply with the site coverage limitations. The patio has been reduced from 625 square feet to 86 square feet. The hardscape has been replaced with a drought-tolerant ground cover that will also be used to retain stormwater. A new drainage plan was prepared by Monterey Bay engineers and demonstrates how all stormwater will be managed on site. The plan was reviewed and accepted by the city's environmental compliance manager. The revised project also includes more landscaping along the perimeter of the patio, and this will also help with reducing soil erosion. So the landscape plan for the entire backyard has been submitted. It was reviewed and approved by the city forester. The plan includes 2 new 24-inch box deodar cedar trees. One will be planted in the backyard and the other one will be planted at the front of the property. The landscape plan also identifies the privacy planting on the south side yard near the gas barbecue. And the planting selection is 5 15-gallon Italian buckthorn shrubs. This particular plant is evergreen. It's also known to be fast growing, and it can reach 10 to 20 feet in height and width. So the backyard improvements also include new lighting. The residential design guidelines encourage using lights only where needed for safety and at outdoor activity areas. The municipal code requires that all landscape lighting be spaced at least 10 feet apart. So the applicant is proposing 3 styles of light fixtures. One is a wall-mounted spotlight, another is a path light, and then the third is a seat wall and step light. So condition of approval number 23 requires that the seat wall lights be spaced 10 feet apart. Staff is also recommending that the path light behind the seat wall be eliminated and then reduce the number of spotlights from 3 to 2 along the south side yard. So to summarize, the applicant's response to the Planning Commission's direction from February, the total amount of site coverage has been reduced and now complies with the maximum allowed at 556 square feet. The patio will be reconstructed at grade and has been reduced from 625 square feet down to 86 square feet. With the seat wall, it's 135 square feet total. The pavers will be set in sand to facilitate on-site percolation of water, and this is stated in condition of approval number 20. The drainage plan has been revised, resubmitted, reviewed, and approved by city staff. The 2 deodar cedar trees are included in the planting plan, and the privacy landscaping is also identified on the landscape plan. So we are back before the commission this evening for final action on this appeal. And after the staff report was published, staff did get some additional comments from 2 neighbors. I'm going to start first with the southwest neighbor, who is not the appellant, but is an adjacent neighbor. And her concerns is that the carapia, I don't know how to say that, but the ground cover that replaced the patio, she's concerned that it's not adequate for heavy rain and that there will continue to be overflow onto her property. Staff did review the drainage plan that was prepared by the engineer, and the plan does retain the water on site. It's been sloped in such a way that it will not direct any stormwater onto adjacent properties. The neighbor also has a concern about the flagstone path along the south side yard being a highway during heavy rain. The engineer did address this by raising the grade of the flagstone path and angling it such that the stormwater will be directed into the ground cover. The neighbor is asking that there be supervision of new construction. And as is common with all projects, the city will permit and inspect as required through the duration of the project. The neighbor was asking for the location of sprinklers to be identified. The landscape designer has indicated that the location will be determined at the time of installation, and that will be done according to industry standards. The neighbor is asking for dust and noise-free construction. The applicant has acknowledged the dust and has offered to use water to try to minimize dust during the demolition of the improvements that are there. Noise, unfortunately, is just part of construction projects, and there's not a whole lot that can be done. But staff did want to just remind everyone the construction hours are 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., Monday through Saturday, and we do enforce these. The last comment was some objections to the planting behind the seat wall and the watering of a proposed creeping fig plant. Staff feels that the additional landscaping behind the seat wall will actually help with on-site drainage and erosion. And so we support the landscape plan that has been proposed. So the following concerns were expressed by the south neighbor, who is the appellant. And his concerns were that he'd like to see that south side yard walkway placed at grade and made of a pervious material, or alternatively, that the pathway include a curb to prevent runoff. Staff would not be supportive of the curb because it would add to the site coverage, and it's also uncharacteristic of the forest setting. We do believe that based on the drainage plan and the modified grades, that all stormwater will be directed towards the ground cover and not towards the south neighbor's property. The neighbor is also concerned that the privacy planting is not going to be sufficient. However, based on my review of the Italian buckthorn, being that it's an evergreen shrub, it is fast growing, and it's 10 to 20 feet high and wide, it should provide a very nice privacy hedge between the outdoor barbecue and the south neighbor's windows. I also wanted to mention too that there are some existing trees in that area that provide a higher canopy, which will also help with privacy. The next concern or recommendation was he'd like to see the seat wall extended, or again, another curb constructed along the south edge of the patio to prevent runoff. As you can see in the drainage plan, the property is going to be gently graded and sloped so that the runoff goes into the center of the ground cover, and it will not be directed south towards the neighbor's property. He also raised the concern about dust and debris during construction, and watering can be used to minimize the dust. And then also just asking for the city to monitor the work that's being performed. And again, we will issue permits and inspect the work through completion of the project. The last component is there is a separate design study application that was submitted to replace the south side yard fence with a 6-foot tall wood fence. This is something that can be approved by staff. If the commission finds that there are privacy impacts that could be better mitigated with a taller fence, you do have the ability to approve a fence that is taller than 6 feet. So if that is the desire of the commission, we would just ask that you take that action tonight. Otherwise, staff can proceed with issuing that design study for the 6-foot fence. And with that, staff's recommendation is that you adopt a resolution granting the appeal in part and approving a new design study, DS 21078, for the modified project. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? No questions. All right. Thank you, Marnie. Is the applicant here? Would they like to speak to the Planning Commission regarding their application?
Hi, I'm the applicant, and Marnie represented us very well. We took everything that you had sent into consideration, and we hope that we did our best to fall within all of your guidelines.
Okay, are there any questions for the applicant from the commissioners?
I don't have it. Oh, yeah, I guess I do have one. Is the 6-foot fence something that you would like?
The current fence that is there is not acceptable for probably either of our houses. Mm-hmm. However, it is actually encroaching on our property line. So we've lost about, I don't have the specific numbers, but I'd say about a foot. So the fence needs to be replaced in order for us to have proper property lines. In addition to, we would be absolutely fine with having a new 6-foot fence constructed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. All right, are there any members of the public that would like to address the Planning Commission at this time regarding this application? Somebody has their hand up there. Phone number ending in 484. You need to unmute. There you go.
Yes, good evening. I am the neighbor to the south, Alan Solberg, and I want to thank everyone for their considerable work to make great improvements to what work was done earlier. I'm in agreement with everything that's being recommended tonight. I think it's a thoughtful plan, and I appreciate that the concerns that the neighbors have had about drainage have been addressed. I think that the screening issue has been addressed. The plants that were originally proposed were not of a sufficient height, but what is proposed now that you were just describing, Marnie, sounds absolutely fine. And that coupled with the new fence, which I think is a very good idea, will also be satisfactory. And I think the fence will also serve to keep any excess water away from our property. So we're pleased with these developments and thank everyone for their efforts on this.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to address the Planning Commission regarding this application? Okay, I don't see any hands up or hear anybody. So I'm going to close the public comments, open it up to the commissioners. Commissioner Locke, you want to begin?
I don't really have a lot of comments on this. It sounds like the property owner listened to our comments from the previous meeting. And I don't really see any issue with the landscaping. I would like to not increase the height of the fence on the south side. I think the landscaping will cover that. So anyway, I'm okay with it at this point.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Locke. Commissioner Dells?
I agree. I don't think I have anything to add. I think the process worked here, and the outcome achieved is certainly satisfactory to me. I appreciate the south neighbor, letting us know this evening that it was also satisfactory to him. I also agree that a 6-foot fence is appropriate. Don't need to go higher unless, if I hear from either, if the south neighbor wanted a higher fence, I would be okay with that. But other than that, I think we just keep it at 6 feet.
Thank you, Commissioner Dells. Commissioner Lehman?
Sure. I want to thank the applicants for cooperating. And I think the end result is that you will like your patio better than what you had before, because you'll have the opportunity for more greenery around you and landscape. And I think your neighbors will be good neighbors. I mean, you have been in reducing the size of this and listening to what the commission and the city has said. So I wish you well.
Okay, it sounds like the commission is ready to support the resolution as per staff with the special conditions that are basically they have the site coverage, tree plan requirement, privacy plan requirements, exterior light modifications, and plumbing and electrical permits prior to resuming any work on the site. So do we have a motion to accept the resolution as per staff?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Okay, the motion's made to accept the resolution as per staff with the special conditions in the motion. Any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Delves?
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman?
Yes.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
Chair LePage?
Yes. Okay, the motion is carried. All right, thank you, everyone. Okay, that concludes the public hearing part of our agenda. Do we have any comments from the director?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep it short. Get everyone out of here before 7:30 for sure. I was going to introduce our newest planner, Catherine Wallace, but it's my fault. I was supposed to introduce her at the beginning. She had to go home this evening, so I'll make sure to introduce her to you next time. But rest assured, she's wonderful. She joined us here a couple weeks ago. She has a background in historic architecture. She spent time here in California. She actually worked with the city of Pacific Grove to update their historic register. She's very familiar with the area, and she's got a great personality, really, really smart, and a great eye for planning. She's going to be our long-range planner. I think I mentioned that before, so we're finally going to have a long-range planner in the city, which we've never had before. It's a position that I requested the city council add, and they did. So it's very exciting for me and for the rest of the village to have a long-range planner. The other staffing updates, our new building inspector started about a month ago, 3 weeks or so, Dwayne DeFini. He's doing a wonderful job too. He was basically plug and play. He's been doing this for years. Has already brought some really great ideas to the organization. I'm pleased to say that as of this week, we're completely caught up on building plan checks and all that stuff. So it's already made a dent. We're sending almost nothing out to CSG. So we're able to do all of our plan checks in-house almost exclusively now, which helps everybody. And he's come up with some great ideas. Like, for example, at a previous jurisdiction, when he would get in the morning, he would look at the list of inspections scheduled that day and personally call each of the contractors he was supposed to meet with and make sure that they were still on for that day or if they needed to shift around, and it just makes everything better. So it's adding, getting this staff not only allows us to move stuff along faster, but allows us to provide that level of customer service that we want to. So I'm excited about this new staff coming on board. The last two recruitments that I need to finish, which are almost done, I expect to have employees in the building by the end of June for both of these positions, are my second code compliance officer. So we'll have 7-day-a-week coverage for code compliance in the village, covering both the commercial and residential districts. And our administrative coordinator position on a full-time basis will be solidified by the end of this month as well. So we're really excited. That's going to be 11 total employees in community planning and building, including myself, which is more than we've had in a long time, and really allows us to provide better service to the village. So I'm super excited about that. I want to just give a gentle reminder. I kind of joked about it earlier. Just remember to use your city-provided Gmail accounts. I would just ask that, please. And then the last thing, it's interesting. There was a couple conversations today at the Planning Commission about staff changes after a Planning Commission approval. I've been working with my team. I actually have a system that I'm working on, and I need to refine it. But I just want to make you aware of it so you know that I'm not listening to you. I think I have an idea where similar to what we do at the Historic Resources Board, when the staff makes a determination of historic ineligibility, we telegraph that to the HRB. They have 10 days to essentially say, we want to learn more about this, or we don't necessarily agree with staff determination, and they can call it up to the HRB. And so we have that in our code right now as a procedure. What I'm thinking is something like, planning staff, if we feel like it's a staff level change that we would otherwise, if it was just a regular single one-off submission, we'd be able to do it at the staff level. But if it's tied to a Planning Commission approval, we would then send that change to the Planning Commission an email. So, if this is something you would like to see, within 10 days, let us know. It's essentially a Planning Commission appeal of a staff decision. So I'm working on that. I need to determine if that's something I have to put in the code or if it's just a procedure that I can put in place right now, because the code does allow the director to refer things up to the Planning Commission. So there may be a way for me just to do it under that, but I'm working on it. Hopefully next month I'll be coming back with that actual item for you. But I've heard you, and I agree that there are certainly items that the Planning Commission should get a chance to weigh in on if it's tied to a project you already saw. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair, unless the commission has any questions for me.
Any questions for Brandon?
No, not me.
Okay. Well, I think we did a great job on tonight's meeting, moved everything right along, took care of a lot of business, and heard a lot of great report. Great report on the
that climate change.
Yeah,
that was great.
That's a lot of work.
You mean the CIP report?
Yeah, and the
That's what you
CIP.
meant.
Yeah, but I didn't mean leave that out. That was really excellent.
That report was boring. The climate change report's much better.
All right. We are adjourned. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you next month.
Night.